My buddy accidentally kicks his loose. He's getting out of trouble.
Yeah.
Plugs it, yeah, plugs in the
You got
port,
you.
but it's kind of,
Or you take the.
I took that game on file, the free.
yeah.
It has a whip this long.
Oh, really?
And
You
then
want ice?
replaces the illumination cord and then you plug the original cord into the back of it. And then it goes up into the dash. So that's the zip tie.
Mayor.
Yeah, I say all this, but I've never actually, there is kind of a whip on it, so maybe it's similar, but.
I know, so
You look at any of our vehicles, you would never know.
I have to tell you, you spy on me, you know.
Oh, the camera.
Oh, has so much to read.
Yeah, we don't have cameras.
So I just think.
Kind of do.
Thank the Lord there's no cameras.
Great family. I'm saying it.
If it's not online anymore.
Oh,
Mayor? So. Mayor? Get started.
We're ready?
Yep.
Okay, 1 minute early. Might get the outcry. We'll now resume the meeting from July 1st, 2020. Thank you. We will now resume the meeting from July 1st, 2025. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a moment of silence for the people in Texas who are suffering from flooding. We certainly know what that's all about. Okay, Valerie, if I could have a roll call.
Councilmember Coleman,
Here.
Councilmember McClendon.
Here.
Councilmember El Rami,
Here.
Vice Mayor Herzog,
Here.
Mayor Kane,
Present.
Public Works Director Gallant. Town Attorney Torcivia will be appearing via Zoom. Town Manager Ramalia.
We ready? Okay, we are resuming with item number 19, which is the discussion of amendments to the capital improvement plan. In your agenda booklet, it's item number 16, FYI, everybody. Because of the changes. And I believe, Jeff, did you present this or you were beginning to present it and we decided that it was too late? I cannot recall. I'm sorry.
We had gone over it.
Uh-huh.
Some may say ad nauseum.
Well, a lot of these things we've voted on before, so yeah.
Yeah, but I had outlined the changes for you. And would remind you that what we're looking for is direction. And in order to do this, it will require an amending ordinance. So there will be a first and second reading on this.
Oh, boy.
So as much direction as you can, but it is not going to be your last opportunity to see if we got it right. But I think it is appropriate for you to direct us to move forward. And if there is something specific you want in or out at this point in time, that would be fine. The projects and the sources of funds are detailed on page 160, I think it is, of your agenda.
Yeah. Lisa, you were quick with that light. You must have something to say.
I was. A few things going back to some of the suggested changes. On the $100,000 TPA grant funding, could that be clarified what that 100,000 is for?
It is for design work and lobbying, mostly associated with the Okeechobee Boulevard project, the corridor there, and the grant efforts that we are trying to get and help with.
How much of it's for the grant and how much is for lobbying?
You mean how much of it is for the engineering design and how much is for lobbying?
Yeah, I see it here written down, but I don't see a breakdown of that.
Of the $100,000, I think there is about $25,000 associated with engineering, and the remainder of it would be lobbying services.
That is not quite accurate, if you don't mind. There are two grants that have to be applied for Okeechobee. One of the grants has already been applied for. This was discussed at the November council meeting, so I'm going to just do a brief overview, and then we'll send out the information again. The grant we applied for a number of years ago, we did as a single grant, and it was a $5 million grant, and it included roundabouts, and it also included the crossings and so on. The way we were advised by the TPA and the county was to split that up. So we did the crossings in our first application that we came and brought forward to RecGAC, did a public meeting, met with council, so on and so forth. And for that, we had to redo the engineering design. It cost us less because we had the previous engineering. And then we had to do the application. So that piece of it was roughly half of the cost of it. And about 25 and 25 is what got spent for the 22, whatever the number was for Mary to work with all the different agencies. And then another similar amount of money for Simmons and White under work authorization. Now there's a second grant, and that second grant would be the roundabout. And there's also a lot of other things going on with Okeechobee. So I think it's not reasonable to try to quantify it into grant 1 and grant 2. And the reason that we got a local lobbyist was to be able to help us navigate through a lot of the local bureaucracy and machinations that we don't have the ease of entry into. So in terms of the breakdown, about half of it was for the first portion of the work, and about half of it is for the next round of work.
Okay, the reason I ask is because I'm in possession of an email going back to the Sluggett agreement, saying that this local lobbying grant application money will be reinstated 100,000 back into the CIP via budget amendment dated March 19th. And as we're looking at budgeting shortfalls and revenue shortfalls, I think it's important that we really look at the spending here. And I want to go back also to the 161st project. I know, Mr. Gallant, you've answered many of my questions on this, and you keep referring to you don't have the time to get this finished. What's the deadline for this? Is this a self-imposed deadline? Because this is almost a $200,000 savings if we do it in-house, which is how it was originally cast, I believe, to the then council.
We can do it in-house, but then the A Road and Collecting Canal project would have to wait. And that's a decision made by council. If the council wants to tell the residents of A Road, they have to wait another 6 months, 8 months for our crews to get over there and start working on that project. We can do that, but I have no problems with that. We can do it
Why
in-house.
does A Road have to be subjugated to 161st or vice versa? Why can't one be done, A Road be done before? And I understand we still don't have all the paperwork for all the properties on the A Collecting Canal. So what would be the holdup on doing 161st in-house?
Just timing and equipment. We're starting to do some of the work on A Road now on the rebuilding the canal banks and stuff. And we're actually getting some of the dirt for A Road from 161st. So
Okay,
we're
well,
actually saving
it's-
about $60,000-$70,000 in materials by having a contractor do 161st concurrently with A Road. Otherwise, we would have to buy material to do A Road because we wouldn't have the material to do it because it's coming from 161st.
Okay, so again, there still looks like some savings in there to be done in-house. And then lastly, my question on Loxahatchee Homes. I think the last time this was brought up, there was about 14 houses of 30 plus homes that had requested this public water and wastewater facilities. And I just wonder, cost-wise to the town, is that anything that's going to cost the town money?
What you see in there for the $133,000 is not limited to Loxahatchee Homes, is it, Mr. Gallant?
That's
No,
not what
it's
I'm
actually-
saying, no,
Yeah,
no,
okay, so
just that portion of it.
Yeah, it's not just water and sewer, it's drainage and yeah, it's the whole thing. And in order to be able to
I
continue
think
to,
Randy's on the line.
oh yeah, we can let Randy speak to it. No question. Randy, can you hear us?
I can hear. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
If you would
great.
be so kind to explain the proposal and how it fits in with the Brazilian Florida and the work that we've been doing for the last several years.
Okay, no problem. Councilmember El Rami, this area of Loxahatchee Homes has been identified as a low-lying area with more consistent flooding in this particular region of the town. So this actually location has been subject to grant funding or at least applications, Resilient Florida grant funding opportunities specifically in this area. Recently, residents have approached town council and have asked for water and sewer. If we're going to go ahead and survey and design this area and get it ready for drainage improvements, if the town or the residents choose to add water and sewer, now's the time to determine how feasible that is. So this proposal is not a full-blown design for water and sewer. It's to take it to the steps necessary to give the town and the residents options of how to proceed with water and sewer. Palm Beach County Water Utilities Department will allow anybody to extend water and sewer to their properties, and they will allow you to construct the main and convert water and sewer, or just one if you choose to, and assess those particular property owners through the tax roll. So there are grants that are available right now. Water Utilities Department is acquiring grants for septic to sewer conversion, but there's opportunities for that. And it all starts with a detailed cost estimate of what the improvements would cost, connection fees, so on and so forth, to then search for grants and give an opportunity for the residents to sign a petition, and whether the town takes this on or the residents take it on with Water Utilities Department to then advance your water and sewer plans and convert potable water potable water would have to go if they wanted to include a central sewer system and convert the septic at the same time.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
So Randy, you're saying it's an option, whether, the town bears the brunt or it's an assessment through water utilities?
Yes, that is correct, Councilmember Coleman. The Water Utilities Department is going to need a set of conceptual plans and a cost estimate before they will take it to the next level, assuming the residents are willing to move forward. So it's after the conceptual engineering and cost estimate phase is where the town gets the most options. If the residents still want to push it and the town can't find funds for them through grant opportunities, the residents can still pursue those improvements through assessment directly with Palm Beach County Water Utilities Department. In any one of these infrastructure related improvements, there's always cost savings associated with restoration and building the infrastructure at the same time.
Right. So as I understand it, this 133,350 is to design the entire area for drainage, for road improvement, for potable water, for sewer. And this is take into effect the need for lift station, et cetera, and where we'd have to acquire easement or to be able to put that lift station, because we can't put it in the middle of a road, and anything adjacent to those roads are just properties, right? So, I mean, and I would assume that there's going to be a lift station involved, because there was a lift station involved with Solar Sport, right? Where all of a sudden they were in the middle of their stuff, and the previous council had to give a variance for a location of said lift station, right? So I assume all this is in conjunction with this planning process?
It is in conjunction with that process. This proposal is not to design that lift station. It's to take the plans to a certain level to give the town and the residents the opportunity to continue to move forward or not. It would identify the location of that station, get it agreed upon with water utilities, and have a dollar amount of what that would cost, and give the residents the chance to proceed. Typically, sanitary sewer is the more expensive. A regional Palm Beach County Water Utilities Department lift station is something that's typically in excess of $300,000. So they are expensive. There are other opportunities that could be considered with other developers in the area should the timing work itself out. So it is something that a lift station would be required. There are other opportunities too. If a low pressure system were considered, we don't recommend them for the size lots in Loxahatchee Homes, because you would have each resident would be responsible for their own grinder station, which is essentially a much smaller, it's a lift station. It's just a much smaller version, and the individual would be in charge of their own maintenance and operation of those systems. Whereas a regional station would be under the care and control of Water Utilities Department, and that's what they do. So it just makes a lot more sense than an individual maintaining it, having that entity maintain it.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything to say? So what you're looking for from us is direction on whether to proceed with these revisions with this source of funding, or whether we want to pull any certain projects. Is that what you're looking for? Because
Yes.
I'm not in favor of pulling any of them. Personally, I'm certainly not in favor of pushing the A Road project back, not even one more day. Those people have been waiting long enough. And we've just gotten started on it, and they were, in my opinion, unjustly overlooked by previous council when they said they were going to do all the major lettered roads, and that road was left off. So I'm certainly not in favor of making any changes that require pushing their project back. I know that the drainage on that Tangerine area has been an issue for, well, since I was chair of the Water Control District. And actually, the one property on the corner there, I won't mention the resident's name, but she paid the Water Control District to install a culvert there. I mean, install a drain there, and they did it improperly. And I've been trying a lot for her for, I don't know, what is it, like 8 years now to get that situation fixed. But there's drainage issues hugely in that area. So that certainly wouldn't be something that I would want to do away with. You know, the Hyde Park improvements are done. So it's kind of a moot point. You can't really take them out there. That's already kind of a done deal. And I'm certainly not in favor of getting out of any grant funding opportunities that we have, or any preliminary work we need to do for grant funding, or for situations that may benefit of our citizens with them being able to get potable water and sewer. And there is a group of people, at least over there. Certainly not everybody, I'm sure. But there is a group of people over there that has come in and visited and would like to hook up to city water. So I'm in favor for keeping all the projects, and it looks like you did a great job of finding the money in other places to offset it. So without harming any other projects. So I guess what we need is some kind of a consensus. Is there something, Paul, that you wanted to add? Is there something?
I had a question for Richard, unfortunately. He got up, but there's a mic close by. On 100, with regard to 161st. So we do it in-house. We don't historically around here like job cost stuff, correct? Projects. Correct? No.
I mean, we can, we have to. So for example, Hyde Park, in which the mayor brought up, on Hyde Park, to get reimbursed from FEMA, we have to have assessed job costs and stuff
Right.
like that. So we're actually in the process of submitting all that to FEMA so we can get reimbursed for that project. So we can.
No, I get my point is we don't know. I mean, we could come in at 250 with staff doing it,
Absolutely.
with rentals, et cetera, whatever, and moving the dirt and not having, I know I read the proposal. My question was, what was this, how many hours was it? We don't have the proposal right here, but I was like, how is it going to take 18 weeks to build this ditch?
It's multiple pieces of equipment.
And then we discerned after Richard contacted them, it was for the not to exceed, right? I mean, the quote was not to exceed, and it was for multiple pieces of equipment so they could flush it out and get it done, moving dirt, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, there's no telling. I mean, some of these projects that we do in-house, maybe that we need to move toward a more job costing as we talk about budgeting and
100%.
looking at how we can really tighten screws and stuff. And we say, okay, well,
Not just job costing, but time estimates, because that's a huge issue.
well, because like you say, this, if we pull off and to go do this instead of the contractor, because we know we're going to need the material down at A Road, so we'd have to pull off, go do this, right? Go back, yeah, and then they're all insured and they keep their equipment on site, and we bring our equipment back every day. I mean, it's just so this is. I mean, we could end up spending more money. I guess is my point. So it's. I don't know. And that would take time away from A Road, like it's pushing it down the road.
Richard a question because it looks like he wants to respond.
Go ahead. Respond. I was just kind of clarification.
The only point I was gonna make is, like the other issue as well with us trying to do A Road and Hyde Park or 161st at the same time is it also takes crews away from other maintenance things that can be done, that should be done. Where with A Road, we have 3 guys that are working on that, which means the other 3-man crew is currently working, like we talked about earlier, dredging out collecting canal between F Road and Folsom. So we got, we're using some of the material from there as well. And so if we had to try to do 161st and A Road, we would literally be using all of our staff to try to do those 2 projects, and we're doing things like replacing stop signs, fixing berms, other maintenance type of tasks. We have to make the decision, do we stop working on these projects and go deal with all this stuff over here? And it just becomes a logistical issue because we just don't have the manpower. DS Eakins has larger equipment that's at their disposal that they're going to be using. So we won't have to use our own equipment. It won't be any wear and tear on our own equipment. So it'll save, extend the life of our equipment. So there's overall savings to having a contractor do this work, especially on 161st. They're going to probably bring more people here to do that job than we even have employed with the town to try to get it done. Because obviously they want to get in and out. So where we'd literally be able to maybe have 3 guys over there, they're probably going to have 6 to 10 people plus multiple dump trucks that, bringing all that material out of there. Larger equipment. So overall, it's better for the town to have a contractor do it, and the town will actually save money in the long run.
Thank you.
Okay, I know Mr. Suit was very eager to comment. So has he put in a public comment card at the last meeting? So let's let him go. I got a good memory.
Thank you. Good evening. Manish Sood, 3765 Key Road. I am speaking today to reference the fact recommendation I submitted on May 5th and June 12th. Our town management stated at multiple public meetings, including our last public fact meeting on June 11th and in writing on May 13th memo, that the town has a surplus of 941,000 positive budget variance. In simple words, we were told that the town is flush with money this year, flush. But based on the fact analysis, which I've shared on these 2 occasions, this is not accurate at all. There is 0 surplus. On top of that, as we all agree now, we are facing a 600,000 revenue shortfall due to lost and other tax discontinuation. When we had presented this budget deficit findings, My colleagues and I were ridiculed and even accused of having personal agendas. That was unfair, but I don't care because this is one of the job hazards that comes with serving in this role. But more importantly now, to our newest council members, I understand you are still getting up to speed. 3 of you are new. But Madam Mayor Kane and Vice Mayor Herzog, you have long experience with our town finances. In fact, Mayor Kane, you served once in my role as fact chair, so you know the numbers. So I'll ask you, both of you today, what action have you taken in response to the disappearance of the 941,000 surplus? If no action has been taken, then now is the time. I urge this council to take one concrete step tonight. Reject the proposed budget amendment that would divert roads and drainage funds to spend on lobbyists and grant writers. Just last month, this council, just last week, this council, with the exception of Ms. El Rami, raised roads and drainage tax on our residents. It is just tentative, but still raised it. And you justified it by saying the money was needed for our infrastructure. If it was true then it is true now. Please do not divert those funds. We cannot afford these new expenses, not while we are in deficit, not until we see a revised budget and cost reduction proposals from our town management. And definitely not in this budget year when our governor has vetoed over 560 million in local community project and grants. So this year is done. There is no easy money. Please show our residents that your words and your votes align. Reject the amendment to divert the funds. There are many amendments under this term, under this item. Reject the amendment to divert the funds that are set aside to build our core infrastructure to be spent on hiring more lobbyists, grant writers in this tough budgetary environment. Thank you.
Is there any other comments?
No, Mayor.
Mayor, with your indulgence, that information was inaccurate. I think I've provided the information to all of you multiple times.
Right.
But I will say one thing, and that is with regard to the contract with DS Eakins for 161st. If we're looking at taking it in-house, the votes on resolution 2025-47, the prevailing votes were the mayor, the vice mayor, and Phyllis, and the non-prevailing votes were Councilmember Al Ramey and Councilmember Coleman. So that's the votes for 161st at the June 3rd meeting.
To
In case-
move forward with that
And
project.
yes, the vote was 3 to move forward, 2 not to move forward. And so in order to bring 161st contract back, it would take a prevailing member, a prevailing voter.
It's already been voted on.
Yes, it was voted on June 3rd.
Right,
June
so
3rd,
the bottom line is Hyde Park's already done. The 161st already been voted on.
For
The-
187,000, not 207,000.
Excuse me?
The contract was for 187,000. As Mr. Gallant explained, they moved the materials and supplies for the culverts and other drainage material to the capital project where the proper job cost accounting would place it. So it's moved from his materials and supplies to the capital account.
So the only two technically new items on here are the $100,000 for the TPA grant funding and the drainage design for Tangerine. The other two have already been voted for and passed. Is that accurate?
Yes, with one small notation, and that is the $100,000 was voted on to be in the budget, then FAC recommended to take it out of the budget, and then the council came back in November and passed a resolution with the understanding we needed to add the professionals to help us get the grant. And a resolution was passed that night supporting moving forward with the grants.
So do we have any kind of consensus up here that, I mean, anybody want to give any kind of inspection? Mr. McClendon, Marge, haven't heard from you.
I'm in agreement moving forward with what's being proposed here.
And I am in.
Paul?
I agree.
I agree as well. Lisa?
No,
Okay, so you have four
Well-
council members who are saying move forward with this as it is, and one says no.
We'll bring it back,
the convenience of this
for
bit.
first reading on, at your August meeting,
Thank you.
with an adoption on September.
Thank you. All right. So that takes care of item 19/16. Okay, item number 20, which is item number 17 in your agenda packet. The discussion of approving and implementing a public records request policy. Valerie, I believe this is your bailiwick.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item comes before you. As you know, this town does receive quite a bit of public records requests, and we are bound to follow state statutes 119, which we do. This basically kind of sums it up more so in a process format, so that way requesters understand the role of the records custodian, what our process is, and it kind of just really clears up what the fees are. Some of the things that kind of are not answered are, for example, when someone will request a set of records, will ask for a deposit, and sometimes those invoices are left unpaid or unopened. This will address that, so that way they're closed out within 7 days if we have no response. If records are abandoned, again, the policy addresses that we can close it out and destroy those records within 30 days. And then also more so is the section pertaining to council members and how we handle those requests. Different municipalities have different processes here. We don't have anything specifically in writing. And so really this is just to kind of open up that conversation for discussion, so that way we can have a uniform process, treat each council member's request the same. And that way I have direction from you all to be consistent with whatever that process is. Because what may work for one may not work for another.
Okay, thank you. Todd, you were quick with your light this time.
Yeah, so on page 184 of the agenda, there's the section 3 request by officials. I think the easiest way to try to clean this up, this is the only thing that I had an issue with, is where there's an allotment of, say, $50 for each council member for doing public records requests for the month. And that equates to about 10 hours per month total between all of us, be burdening the town clerk with records.
Each council member gets 10 hours or?
$50. Each council member gets $50 worth of public records for free,
Okay,
which would equate to 10 hours total of all 5 of us.
which would free you up to do
Right.
your,
So I mean, it's,
rest of your
it's
job.
basically 2 hours for each council member per month, which is a total of 10 man hours for the month. Is what we would be potentially burdening her with.
and do you think that council members should be charged for all public, like the standard policy, as I understand it, Valerie, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you get a public records request that is going to take you 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I mean, if you know it's just a print, even from somebody in the public, right? You just fulfill it and you don't charge for that. Am I accurate on that?
Yes, however, if I do have to print something and they want a hard copy, I will charge them for the paper, obviously,
15
and
cents
ink,
for the
but I'm
copy.
not charging for time.
You're not charging for time. So if it
Correct.
takes, and that's the standard that you have established, 15
Yes.
minutes, is that?
Yeah, 15 to 30 minutes.
15 to 30
Mhm.
minutes. Okay. All right. So if a council member, if an individual council member was going to go over their $50 limit, then they could, as a private citizen, request it and just pay the fee for it.
Of course.
Correct? I
Sure.
mean, like that would be,
The idea
that would
is-
be a fine way
the
around it.
idea is so the council's not burdening her with 30 hours a month.
Right.
And there's no recuperation of the funds there.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood what you were saying, Paul.
Well, yeah, because as I understand it, like if one of us asks for something, the priority goes to us, versus somebody else, right? So they're going to focus on what we want pulled.
So if somebody's doing excessive.
So we're pulling excessive records, then it's taking time away from the public anyway, right? So I don't think we need to go as far as like we request it like as a citizen. It's just if you exceed your, what'd you say, $50?
$50.
Your $50 allotment, then you start getting billed.
Right.
You know, this kind of makes it easy.
The same way that everybody
Yeah,
else.
this is, I think you just start getting billed. I don't think we need to go through and fill out a separate request or whatever. It's based off our email. It's just, we start getting billed if we go over our $50 allotment.
Correct.
I think that's more than fair.
Right.
mean,
Like I
if
said,
we're-
it comes out to 10 hours for the whole council.
Right.
Is what we burden her with.
And I think if it's something that staff thinks that if we wanted to come in and they could show us how to look it up, if we wanted some excessive stuff, then by all means, they could show us how to look it up and we could look it up. There's
it up ourselves.
computers available in town hall, correct? So I think, you know, if it's something that we really thought we need to drill into and we don't have anything specific and we want to look at something vague so we can dial in more, then we could come look it up ourselves as well without any cost, right?
Right. And if it is sent electronically, I know one of the things it talks about in here is if a specific council member asks for it, only that council member gets it. Well, if it's electronic, I think all the council should get it at that point.
And that's an important point that we need to discuss.
Yeah, that's under
in
number
a
3.
decision
I
that
have
needs
that
to be
circled
made
as well.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
if, you know, if one requested and you all want it, fine. If not, that's fine too.
Do-
But just keep in mind that if it is something that, like you're saying, that we do have to make copies of and it comes out to be 200-300 pages for some odd reason, right? So here, I'll give you an example. We have a lot of records that are currently, with our planner, Mr. Fleischman, that I currently do not have in-house. I am working on retrieving all those records. Now, if let's say there's 100 pages, now it's now 500 pages. Now, I don't see that happening all the time, but it could.
Well, would that be something that it would be prudent for us to put something in the policy that says something like, if it's going to be an excessive, then it has to come back to council for a vote to decide whether it's actually worth your time to do that?
Well, no, they're gonna get the record, and if it's over $50, they're gonna have to pay. If it's less than 50, they don't.
Right. I
Right,
think what
but-
we were talking about is in terms of sharing that
Sharing to
information.
Everybody.
If it's electronic, I assume it's easy enough. right?
If it's
Just
electronic,
copy.
automatically share it, but if
Maybe-
it's
But if it's 500 pages of paper, then it's something you would have to come back to council and get a consensus of whether we all get a copy of it.
Well, I mean, I guess if you were having to copy 100 pages, you know, 5 pieces per, wouldn't it take the same amount of time or less to scan it? And just provide it as a PDF?
We could,
I mean, versus a hard copy, that would cut down on some of the costs anyway. So, I mean, produce 500 pages, that's,
Then we'd have it digitally, which
Right.
would be a good thing for the future if we need.
I mean, if there's somebody that needs it tangible, needs a, you know, tactile, has a tactile thing, then,
Me.
okay. I wasn't pointing fingers there. Yeah, you know, you can print it out if you like or whatever, you know, it's totally, I think it's fair across the board. And I mean, but also I mentioned we're going to adding, because we can't accept flash drives from the public due to possible, we don't want to accept in any
malware threats.
malware stuff. So, you know, we can get a batch of a whole bag full of ones with flash drives. We can even spend probably extra 25 cents per or 5 cents per and get our little logo put on it. It's a tchotchke thing, as well as, you know, if you want, you know, it could be just a way, because nobody uses CDs anymore, right? I don't know if they have computers that even read CD-ROMs anymore. You're the tech guy. CD-ROMs, yeah. Yeah. Floppy, the real floppy, right? The 5.5. So I think that's just, you know, it's kind of the wave of the future. I mean, I know I look at my agenda, I have my hard copy, but I read my agenda on my iPad, and, you know, it's a real great tool because I can just make notes as I go and stuff. So.
Okay, Miss Elramy has her light on.
so I know, Paul, you and I got up here at the same time. Have you requested anything, documents?
I don't think so. I think I've just had some questions and stuff. I don't think I've actually requested, you know, give me.
Okay, so it's
This.
clearly this is directed at my request, one of them being 5 properties on Okeechobee Boulevard. All right, these are properties that have historically been seriously questioned by the public. They've been questioned by council. These documents triggered a series of rejections based on vested rights, historical legacy, and then the cost of actually producing these documents for me, to the point that Mr. Fleischman was directed by staff to get these documents for me. And then on May 4th, I have an email where he was told to stop working on this and instead provide a cost estimate. That question of who directed him, for 3 times now, he has refused to answer my question. Who directed him to stop working on what he was told would have no cost associated with it and instead provide a cost? So tonight, if somebody would like to answer the question, who directed Mr. Fleischman to stop providing this for me?
I did. When I saw your email that said we misunderstood what you wanted. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we hope that you would engage with us. Paul asks me for stuff all the time and I give it to him whenever he asks for it. I think that after you sent your email, you said what you wanted and it was easier to get it for you and it wasn't at the same level of cost. With respect to those documents, I did ask our attorney if there was a concern about distributing them. And there are several reasons why. One, two of them are applications for vested rights. Those items will come in front of you. If you all have those documents, that may put you in harm's way. Harm's way meaning that they may not be finished, they may change along the way, they are still subject to all kinds of review. It puts you in an ex parte situation. Furthermore, they're all in code enforcement, those 5 properties, and council per the charter are not supposed to be involved in the daily activities. So one of the reasons for not being involved in the code enforcement is those items may ultimately, like these vested rights applications, be back in front of you and you will need to vote. So I think that's what the writers of the charter were trying to protect everyone from. But, you know, we are an open book.
Well, I disagree. Most of these properties either have had code enforcement complaints put in against them and ignored. And in one case specifically, the case was dismissed on vested rights after the magistrate had ruled on it. And 2 days after I asked for these documents, that's when that property put in a vested rights application.
I don't find that that's accurate. And I would also say to you, if you would like to come in and talk with us, that
Okay.
we can show you that those things have been in code enforcement and
Okay.
remain in code enforcement.
But
and we
those
do have-
properties on Okeechobee, while important to talk about and to come up in front of us by appropriate channels, is not the issue that we're talking about here. The issue we're talking about here is a
Correct.
policy for
Correct.
records requests that is appropriate and that is fiscally responsible on the behalf, on part of the council members. And nobody's saying that you can't get records. They're just saying that above a certain amount, you'll have to pay for them. I mean, I think that's reasonable and appropriate in my
Well,
opinion, but everybody agree with?
I think this also weighs into the next item of denial or redaction of records. As an elected official, I think that that is a concern. I do respect the manager's statement on the legality of some of that stuff. But my other concern with this document here is I've had multiple people contact me with differing prices being provided to them for research on items. And I just want to make sure I know myself when I'm dealing with a company or government, I get very frustrated when things differ, right? So I think we have to be very careful that we provide a consistent policy moving forward for the public records.
I'm pretty sure that's why Valerie did this, is because there was a lot of accusations.
understand.
And there's a nice little chart here with how much it costs per
There's
page.
a chart
of-
currently on our website as well, and the
That's
prices still
correct.
differ. So
Well, I don't, would you like to speak to the prices?
Anything that we charge, we have an invoice for. So if anybody would like to come in and inspect the invoices that we've drafted, I welcome it. But again, if you're asking for records for emails, that price is going to be different than you asking for a record that is on my desk. And that is because I have to go to a consultant or our IT contractor to pull that information. He charges a little over $100 per hour. So I always get in writing approximately how long it'll take for them to pull those records. It's not for the town to cover that cost. If someone's making that request, they need to cover that cost. And that is, I have everything in email so I can justify any costs. I think you'll find that I'm actually very, more so on the side of trying to find ways of not having to charge folks for their records requests, because historically it has been such an issue. Ms. Suchi's here in the audience. when I first started, I recall that she came in saying that none of her records requests were responded to by the previous clerk. I sat with her, we went through, I don't know how many records, and did I charge you for any of them? Absolutely not. Did I charge you for my time? Absolutely not. There was a situation where she came in to view and inspect records where I could have charged her for staff time. Didn't charge her for that either. I really do try to work with the residents, but if it is going to be a cost to the town, where I see that it's not fair for the town to incur that cost, then yes, I will charge. And I do have invoices and I do have records for all of that. And I stand by those decisions.
Okay, well, I also stand by that anything that takes over 15 minutes of your time, I don't care who it is, you should be charging for. If that's the standard, that's the standard. So I can understand trying to clean up a mess that you walked into, but I don't think that you should be giving your services away, because when you're doing that, you're not able to work on the agenda for the weekly committee meetings that we have. And then you get bombasted for not having the agenda out on time because you're fulfilling 400-page public records requests. So I think that you need to stick to your guns and make it so that it is actually cost effective for the town. Your time is a valuable commodity for this town. So personally, I feel like if 15 minutes is your standard, then you stick to your guns. Paul?
Yeah, it came up a second ago. Mr. Fleischman is parting ways, right? He's still kind of semi helping, etc. I mean, I know to digitize all his stuff would be a insurmountable feat for him.
Well, we're planning on retrieving all those files and doing that in-house. So I'm working on a plan for that.
Read my mind. Okay. All right. Yeah, just because I know
Floppy disk.
yeah, on floppy disk. Yeah, right. I just know the few things that I have asked for even prior to sitting up here. If I said to Francine, hey, listen, what's this? And I just want the ULDC code or whatever, just picking her brain. And she just fires it right to me, and it takes 2 seconds. She knows right where to find it. And she's like, this is in the ULDC, Paul. And, I get the message. I can look it up. Message it's heard. But I mean, same thing with Valerie. So I mean, I think, I mean, if you're doing a broad scope of stuff that's going to take a bunch of time, I kind of get it. I mean, if you're specific surgical type of looking, whether, how much did we recover from X landowner whose road got paved in front of him that was supposed to reimburse the town? That's kind of a specific item, right? But if it's, I want every email for Larry Powers when he worked here. That takes a consultant. Or Larry Peters. Did I say Powers? My bad. Sorry, Peters. Sorry, Larry, if you're watching. But yeah, so that's a project, right?
That involves IT.
Yeah, it's a project, much similar to, when, I won't use the D word because, it's a bad word, but when those folks come in and they want to get a use change or whatever, and there's a cost recovery, thing there because it's a project. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of different wheels involved, different persons involved. So yeah, I think at a cost recovery basis, and I think $50, credit is a little fair. I think we can always revisit it if, a year from now we're sitting here going, $50 wasn't enough. We need to up it to 100.
If 3 months from now.
Yeah,
We can always revisit.
absolutely.
We have to start somewhere.
So
It's no policy. So the consensus, did you have
Mayor,
something else you
We
wanted
do
to
have a
say?
public
I'm
comment.
sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a public.
We do. Ms. Suchi?
Sorry.
Cassie Suchi. I just want to reiterate, I didn't get all free stuff, okay? I just want to reiterate that. Valerie worked with me in the beginning because what Lakeisha did was a complete and utter mess. And I was reluctant to sue the town because that was never my objective. My objective was just to get the information. So Valerie worked hard at the direction of the council and the attorney to work to clean a lot of that up. As for getting free stuff, I have not. I do want to reiterate, the talk up here is not directly reflected to the actual application because $50 does not even cover one email at $100. And the question is then, we're finding out, so you say $50, so you ask for one email, you only get $50, so you have to what? Pay another $50 for one email? So I don't think your $50 price is reflective of actually what some of the costs are. The other thing is, you are our elected officials. The people in the town expect you to ask questions, find information, research these agendas, not just take what's given to you. However you do it, everybody does things differently. I know as a resident, and I know several residents that would want you to have that access. So maybe if you're concerned about copying stuff and using resources, perhaps they can, like Paul said or Todd said, come in and instead of just saying, here you go, and you just give them an open system, here's the records, like when I come in to view something and just, I'll view it. I'll look what I need to do. I'll go real fast. Or when I looked at the code cases, I went on the computer and we went through them really fast. I got exactly what I needed and I was out in 15 minutes. So maybe having you access to come in so it doesn't require them making copies. Although electronic really doesn't take a lot. If it's an email and you can search on a subject column for an email, that's very easy. I don't know if any of you have searched emails. It's very easy, but just understand that what you're talking about is great, but it's not reflective to what is actually occurring. I have made requests, the exact same requests that other people have made, and I got charged $400 and they got them for free. Or I got charged another amount or an hourly rate and their rate was completely different. And I've kept documentation of all that, just to document it so that we ever had a discussion, it can be addressed. Now, whether it's being done specifically to me, I don't know, and I would hope not. I would hope it was just an oversight. But the $50 I don't think is accurate. And if you're going to give an amount, which you want to maybe make it more reflective of what the prices are, include IT people as well, because I want you guys to have the information and question. So that's
I personally get all the information I need. Is there any more public comment?
Manish,
Was
two,
he
three.
next or was there someone in front of him?
Oh,
No,
sorry.
that was for the next item.
It's for the next item?
Yeah.
Okay,
It says 20. Oh, we're on 20. I'm sorry. You're right.
okay, so
She's
there was someone in
next,
front
Ms.
of you,
Plant.
Mr. Suit, I'm sorry.
Okay, I hate getting up here and talking, but public records request, I don't think the $50 is fair when you're going to say, but I'm going to tell you how much it is after you get it. So I'm going to give you a deposit of $50 and then it's going to be what? It's going to be 100, it's going to be 300. You would not do business with people if that's the way they did business with you. If the roofer came and told me it was 5,000 down and I'll let you know how much when I finish, I would never give them the job. I don't understand how we can do that if you don't have an idea of where something is. I don't know if it's mismanagement of the town, but how do you not know where records are? If I ask for something, it's either on the computer or in a file somewhere. It shouldn't be that hard to find it. I really, for the life of me, I've been in insurance, I've been in retail, and we have never had an issue finding records like somehow this small town can't find. And I've heard because somebody left and they don't know where they put the records, that seems crazy to me. But anyway, I don't think that's fair, having a $50 and then whatever it could be when I hand you the paper, it's this. I just don't see that as being fair business. Also, I think it's crazy to put limits on the council as to how much they can spend to get records. You guys are up there doing a job for us. I think if you see something and you need something, it should be available to you. I mean, she's great, but she's paid for by the town. We pay her, and I know she has other things to do, but there's other people here too that can do other things. I don't understand why you would give yourselves limits on how much information you can get. If you need it for a meeting, I think it's important. I wouldn't put limits on people. Anyway, that's my say.
Thank you. Mr. Suit is next?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
All right, Manish Su, 3765 E Road. I would like to do a public request on public request. In other words,
Yeah.
I would like to understand how is this process working? if and I'm I'm in information technology in my day job. If you're an open book, if your processes are efficient, if everything is digital, it seems ridiculous to me that you're paying an IT consultant $100 an hour to search for an email and just click a button, search keywords, search a button and export. $100 an hour for this job. Why is that? And public requests should be publicly posted. In other words, if I requested something, it should be publicly posted on the website. You have already done the work. It's digital, posted. No CD, no USB required. You have online space. Just put the file up there, upload it. And I think it's ridiculous. I agree. It's ridiculous to charge our elected officials. It's like saying if town manager Francine wants to ask Jeff about certain document, now, are we going to charge her? Or are we going to charge a consultant asking a question? This is part of your workflow. Council is supposed to manage the town management. But if you keep on adding roadblocks in this process, you are taking this town downhill. Thank you so much. And I will be doing a public request on mapping this process. Thank you.
Mayor, briefly. Ms. Oakes has already started doing that audit because of the comments that were here this evening, because she too wants to make sure that everything has been applied consistently. Additionally, I do want to make a clarification. Anybody who asks for anything on the way to an agenda gets it. That's not a public records request. A public records request is when something has already been voted and it's behind us and you're asking for detailed records that we have to go and dig up. And I do want to also put into the public record why getting records is so difficult. Well, apparently the district didn't feel that they were subject to the same public records rules as other municipalities in the state of Florida. In fact, I saw a memo that they got from their attorney that said they weren't. All of their stuff is in boxes and we've been
That we
going-
had to rescue out of the building when the ceiling, when the roof of it
and
collapsed
we
because they all got
going
wet. Yeah.
Through. We have been going through all those boxes and folders and filing cabinets methodically and trying to identify records that we need to keep versus records that may be destroyed. We have not destroyed anything. Additionally, you all have been in this building on and off over the years. I think you saw that when I first started working here was like a hoarder's house and there were boxes everywhere. And now you don't see that many boxes because we've gotten that many records cleaned up. We still have a lot more to go. One of the issues that has to come forward as we're looking at the budget actually is to speak to the technology, because the technology that we currently use is Dropbox, and Dropbox is not as secure as we need it to be. It's also not as accessible as we need it to be, and most other localities use Laserfish. I'm sure that Mr. Coleman's familiar, but if not,
Not my end.
yeah.
I create records. Yeah,
Yeah, right. So
I create lots of records.
for this year's budget, that actually happens to be one of the things. It's not something you see. It's like you flush your toilet. It makes, it goes down, you're good. You don't think about it. But the work that has been done here by Valerie and her team, by Karen and her team to put Humpty back together again. I'm not going to take any credit, but there was a long time there wasn't anybody, with the light on. But I think y'all know the lights were on. So, this has been quite a labor and we agree with you. You should be able to ask for something and get it right away. We didn't make it this way. We found it this way. We're fixing it. Okay, I believe Paul was first, Todd.
With regard to the redaction, not that anybody doesn't know where I live that's from here, right? But, and I don't know if I guess we're employees because we're paid, but I don't know how that works here. But, with the other job I do, I fall under that privacy law. So yeah, anything that had my address on it, I would want it redacted. I mean, cause it's just that I'm not saying redact the pertinent information, but yeah, like code officials, our code enforcement folks, stuff like that. That's all. And then you're going to get stuff. If you get asked for a public records request from PBSO, you're going to get all kinds of redaction, like you're getting a CIA document, I think. So, I mean, it's just, so I think the redaction needs to be in there. I mean, if you think something is, I think as a council person, if you're asking for a record and you think something's been redacted that isn't that you don't think should be redacted, I think you should be able to view the original document. Because if you get that printed out document and it's not redacted, or the digital document and the address isn't redacted, again, not that anybody in here doesn't know where I live, but it's out there in the world, et cetera. So, and I think as council people, we're afforded that same, under the same rule, correct? No,
We are not.
no, we're not. Okay, well,
We are not.
then I'll be the lone black sheep up there.
We made a big investigation about all the bullying and harassment
Right.
of public officials that was going on, and then did nothing about it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So,
Took a big survey, we all answered questions about how many times we were bullied, abused, called names,
right.
physically abused, and then they did nothing.
So yeah, I like the direction it's going. Maybe it's not 50, Todd. Maybe it's 100. I'm just saying. I'm just I
I
mean-
mean, 50, and if you need more, come to council and
Well,
say,
yeah.
hey, I need more.
Well, I think the issue is with the email is, yes, if Valerie's an admin to all the email accounts, then Valerie could.
She is not.
I'm saying if, I said if, the big if, right? Then she could search by a keyword. But as I know, when I search for my own stuff in personal life and work, sometimes that keyword doesn't always work well, and you have to dig in over here, because as a public records request, if you're asking for this big broad brush of stuff, we have to fulfill that, right? So, and heaven forbid that we miss one, right? So you gotta it's got to be dug around in, and it's not. I wish it was as clean as it could be. And good thing we did save those documents, because I can't tell you how many times I tell people at my other job that, sorry, I can't get that document for you because they had a pipe break in the D&D building where we were
Yeah,
storing
were
everything.
out there in
Yeah.
the rain carrying the
Yeah,
boxes
so-
into the building, yeah. They were still wet. Todd?
Valerie, do people get surprise invoices, or do you always give a cost estimate?
I think, yes, they are surprised by the deposit request, but give it in writing, if that's what you're
You
asking.
give a cost estimate before fulfilling it. So somebody says.
So what I do is, like, for example, we're gonna pick on the emails because that tends to be a big one that I do get from the community. And so they're always kind of shocked at the amount. So typically, the IT contractor will say, it's gonna take me approximately 2 hours. So whatever that exact amount is, and I think they're $125 an hour. So then I'll say, okay, the deposit is $250. So that way we can retrieve those emails. That also does not include my time to review those emails. And that's what I don't think the general public understands is that that's just a deposit to cover what the town has to pay to retrieve that information. Then I have to go through each email and make sure that there isn't exempt and confidential information, because sometimes there's banking information. We have to go through all of those emails and we have to redact it. Now, I have a process where I have someone on staff that kind of has a general idea of what to look through, but they're not a certified municipal clerk. They can't stamp it and say, yes, it's ready to go. I still need to go back through and give it the final approval. So then what happens is, if let's say there's 100 emails, it's going to take that time to go through it, right? So I don't know how long that'll take me. I don't know if it's going to take me 10 minutes. I don't know if if one email has 20, email trails, so that part of it, I can't sit here and say, hey, it's going to be a total cost of $500. It's just an estimate.
How often do the estimates come out where they're very under? You estimated 250 and it was $400. Is that pretty fair?
That doesn't typically happen a lot. And so what we do is that when we can see that the price is creeping up, we'll call and say, hey, we've gotten to, 50 emails and we're at this price. Do you want us to continue? We had that situation with an attorney. I believe that there was about 1,000 emails that we had to review. And they were completely fine with our process. You know, we kept checking in with them and do you want us to continue? Yes. Okay.
So I don't think we're limiting what we can do. Well, we are to a certain extent, but let's say a council member says, hey, I need all the emails from the town attorney for 6 months. What's the town attorney going to charge us for that, right? I mean, the cost is going to be astronomical if we're paying $200 and something an hour and he's spending 4 days to compile all this information. That's a huge amount. And if every council member sitting here did that, we would be in a financial mess, right? So, I mean, that's kind of what it's about, is to try to reduce those costs. I mean, we can see moving forward, we need to start reducing costs. And that's kind of what this does. And if you say, hey, I need a public records request and it's going to be $500, you can bring it to a council meeting and say, hey, this is an important item. We need to address this and we need all the emails from the town attorney regarding this. And the council can say, yeah, we're willing to
Right.
spend $5,000 to pull all those emails because it is important. It's something that the council needs to address.
Right.
So you're not just stuck with that $50. So you're stuck with the $50 with your own free will, but you're not stuck $50 as a council.
Anybody else have anything to say? All right, so I think, are you clear on what the instruction is? $50? I think, tell me if I'm right, guys. So the consensus is on $50. Investigating the claims that were made that you have charged unfair or different prices for different people. I think you're doing an audit to do that. So to get that situation cleaned up, so that accusation can go away or be dealt with. $50, and then you pay for it yourself, and we'll, if anybody feels the need to do something huge more than that, they just bring it up at a council meeting during their comments, and we all say, yep, you're right. We should definitely be looking into that and direct you to do that.
And I think the other thing is that everyone gets a copy.
Oh, okay, and I think we said if it was electronic, everyone got a copy. If it was not electronic, I would say if it
Well,
was.
I think he was saying that just go ahead and scan it and send it anyways.
Yeah,
So
it'll
basically
become
everyone would get a
electronic.
copy.
Yeah,
Okay.
so everyone gets a copy of what someone does.
Unless it's gonna,
I know, but
Unless it's
what if
something
it's
that's plain-
something like, yeah, and what if it's something like huge sheets that you can't, oh, I don't know, you'll figure that out. I'm still in the floppy disk era with him, so I don't like.
but we don't have a large format scanner though, correct?
We do.
Oh, we do.
Oh.
Okay. So that answers that question.
Yeah.
So even if it's
No
24
matter
by
what it is,
36
what-
set of blueprints,
Weissman stuff is. what
Right, yeah,
we may have to
prints
do.
are 24, 36.
Okay, so we could all get it, even we may not be able to read it because it may be midget sized.
But what about in the case that it's, you know, and I understand asking for stuff and not getting it, and then, you know, I'm sure we guys got to be told, listen, this is something that's coming up, right? Because I think maybe the attorney's off base, but that could create some kind of an issue if we're getting copies of stuff ahead of time, whatever that's an application.
We shouldn't be asking for information on cases
Right.
that are an active code. We shouldn't be. We shouldn't.
We're leaving that up to the discretion that, hey, this is, you know, and just
Is
notifying.
that something you want us to address, Valerie, to come to a decision on? I mean,
So if you're gonna be copying
who's
everybody,
gonna be the arbiter? Yeah, right. If somebody makes a request that is legally sensitive, then I guess you'll need to get an opinion from the lawyer, because the direction is to copy everybody.
Correct.
And if you copy everybody on something that's an active code case, it could put us in a very sticky legal position.
but do we really need a judgment from the, I hate to use the word judgment, an opinion from the lawyer on something like that? I mean, I know, I'm just trying to, so I mean, she's a certified,
Being the one who
Right.
makes the decision.
I mean, if it's something that's a code matter, super easy. If it's something that's coming before you as a land use matter, super easy.
right, no, absolutely.
If it's something that's a legal matter, also super easy, just like what we had to do recently.
I'm saying, I think we need to put in there that we defer to the judgment of the clerk. Right.
And like I said, if the clerk says we can't have it for A, B, and C, you can sit here at the next council meeting and say, no,
Give it to
I want it, right? And
Right.
I need direction from the rest of the council. We need this.
But
Right.
and if she and if Marge wants it, right? And she's saying you really can't have this because of this, I can't copy everybody, then we can have a consensus, okay, you don't have to copy us on it.
or
Right.
whatever the decision
Yeah,
is.
so she could still get her public records, or Lisa or
100%.
whoever can still get the public record with a, so,
Okay, did that answer all of your questions, Val, in bringing
Yes.
this up?
Thank
Okay,
you.
excellent. All right, we're on to item number 21, which is item number 18 in your agenda. That's you, Karen. That is.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is a discussion regarding lien reduction. We kind of hit upon it at another meeting, and this was actually, I think, presented last year where some of you were not on the council at the time. So wanted to bring it back for kind of a discussion item. I do have a PowerPoint. Let me see, do I have?
It's
this
up.
clicker?
can I just note, this is a discussion, not a vote, correct, Mayor?
Yes,
Okay, just clarifying.
thank you.
Okay. So just to clarify, I provided several documents. So I figured before we get into the confusion, I wanted to outline what you received. So you received 4 documents. The first one was an ordinance to adopt an interim code compliance lien reduction and release policy. The second document was the actual policy. That was the nature of the ordinance. The third document was a resolution in order to implement a fee for the request. And then the fourth one was the ordinance to actually adopt the code compliance lien request. And I think the reason it was done, although it
And
was,
we wonder why it takes so long to get anything done in this.
I think part of it is, again, ordinance required 2 readings and resolutions only require 1. So I think the intention was try to get something on the record, and then at least you had something and then proceed with the ordinance. I think that was the intention, but I didn't want to change anything because that was kind of the way you were going. So that's kind of why we're here today, to kind of talk about discuss it a little further before we go forward. So the first thing, this is what is in your code right now. 2 paragraphs. That's it. So you do have the right as a resident presently in order to request a lien reduction. What it doesn't provide is things such as what's the standards, how do we do it? So that's why this documentation is in front of you tonight. So it talks about that you can do it, and it talks about that there's a payment.
Excuse me, can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Let me go back.
If we were to set a standard, if we were to say it's we'll take no less than, I don't know, 40%, I'm throwing a number out there of whatever the fine was,
Mhm.
the magistrate doesn't have to, I mean, even if we pass an ordinance that says that, the magistrate does not have to adhere to what our standard is, do they?
That is correct, ma'am.
That is what we've been told.
That is
So
correct.
why would we spend legal money setting up a standard that the magistrate doesn't have to follow anyhow?
So there are two reasons. Okay. One is that the special magistrate always asks the town, what is your position? So by getting
And then they do
guidance
what
from
they
you,
want.
again, you're right. She doesn't have to follow it, but getting guidance from you would at least give some guidance to staff.
Okay.
Particularly a lot of times people won't, if we said this is what our limit is, some people might accept it. We don't even have to go to court. We can enter into a stipulation, but I don't have that guidance right now. So I really can't answer it. The other reason I think is that the special magistrate, I think if you give the individual at least some ideas of what you're looking for, and this isn't, it also talks about what are the criteria for even providing a lien reduction. As you can see, it doesn't have standards. So what should she be looking at? Should she be looking at was it a life, health, safety violation? How long it took them to correct it? What are the standards that you want to take a look at that, again, the special magistrate doesn't necessarily have to take into consideration, but if it's in the code, chances are more likely than not they will. So there's a lot of details that are not in the present sections. Okay, so the language that we have here is first, what does the ordinance apply to? So we're talking about lien reductions. We're talking about partial releases, because what happens is sometimes you have 2 parcels of land, and what happens is the lien could attach to the second parcel. It's all legal, so maybe they need to get a parcel release. And then the unenforceable lien is, was there a bankruptcy that occurred? Or maybe the land was foreclosed on, or maybe we took over it because we went through a foreclosure and got it. So we want to release the liens. So we're talking about not just lien reduction, but the two other processes that go through. We're also indicating that there's fees for filing of the request and the administrative cost for us to process it. We also, which I talked about a little bit before, was the preliminary conditions to consider, such as when the property became in compliance, were there no overdue accounts. In other words, we don't even want to consider a lien reduction if certain items haven't already been taken care of. The property should be in compliance before you consider it, right? The idea that there shouldn't be any monies owed to the town, whether that's owed on the property, whether that's property taxes, whether that's they did a special events permit and they didn't pay for it, whatever it is. There's certain preconditions that we've listed in this that we want to take into consideration. And then the last one that I talked about was any factors to consider, such as the gravity of the violation. Were there previous violations against the property, or is this the only one? Whether the length of time to cure it. Sometimes you look at the individual sold the property, so they didn't do the original violation. Do we want to take that into consideration? So that's outlined in the documents that are before you tonight. The town attorney did review the documentation. There were some comments that he did provide to me, some clarifications, but there were two items that I really were not included in the documentation that I really wanted to discuss and spend some time with you today. So the first one was, there is a provision in there that says if you are denied whatever lien reduction, whatever it is, you cannot refile for another year. The attorney's office feels that's unreasonable. It is a common provision. I'm not going to say everybody has it. Maybe a year is too much. Maybe it's 6 months. Maybe it's not at all. So I wanted to bring that forward, whether there was any consensus regarding should we prohibit someone from being able to refile for a lien reduction after they have been denied it. So I'm going to open that up first to council to get some feedback from you on what your thoughts are on that.
Lisa.
You want to provide an example of what that might look like?
So say somebody comes in and trying to think of an example for a lien reduction, and just say they want, it could be any number, but say they want 20,000 reduction. The town only is willing to do 10.
For doing
And
what?
I'm sorry,
For doing what?
we're doing
Like, what did they have a violation for?
very common. Let's just say they cleared the land without a permit.
Okay.
Okay, so we we fine them for that. And let's just say they come in and say they purchased the property, although if they purchased the property, they should have done a title search, but we won't go there. But just say they purchased the property and they come into you and they said, well, I didn't have anything to do with it. As soon as I found out, I went ahead and did the change, and I want a reduction. And the special magistrate comes back and goes, well, you know, again, why didn't you get a title policy that would have told you there was a lien against the property? So I'm denying the lien request, the lien reduction request. So under that scenario, with the language in front of you tonight, that property owner would be precluded from refiling again for another year.
Thank you.
That's the issue before you tonight. Is there a desire to prohibit a refiling? No right or wrong. This is not, you know, a legal issue one way or the other. Or do you want it less? Do you want it as is? Or do you want it not at all? So again, I think it's important that I bring forward to you, you know, the options that you have, and this is an option for you all to consider. So I'm looking for some guidance on that particular provision. Do you want us to delete it? Do you want us to keep it? Or do you want us to change it?
Okay, excuse me 1 second before Mr. McClendon was next, but Mr. Torcivia, apparently, I don't see your little hand waving, but apparently he has a comment.
Oh, great.
So let me let him make his comment and then we'll go to Mr. McClendon.
Yes, the only thing I wanted to mention is that in an ordinance, you can provide definite provisions for the magistrates. Say, for example, that you may not reduce a fine to less than 10% or 20% or whatever number you want. Several cities have that because the magistrate has got to follow the law and you're creating the law. So you can limit how much the magistrate will reduce the fine. Many cities will give credit for work the person did to come into compliance. So for example, if you had a $100,000 lien and you could reduce it to 10%, that's $10,000. If you spend $7,000 fixing it, the magistrate could, in their discretion, give them a credit for 7,000, so the lien would be reduced to 3,000. So that's the only place I wanted to jump in on Karen's presentation, was if you want to set that in an ordinance, you can.
But again, the magistrate cannot follow it. That was the point I made
No.
earlier. If we set it at like 40%, they can not follow that. They can still make a decision.
No, she has to follow what you put in your ordinance. Just like in your ordinance,
Oh,
you can,
okay.
you, for example, can say a fine of up to $250 or $500. She can't go to 1,000. That sets a limit on, she has, just like a judge in the sentencing. A judge can sentence someone within guidelines the legislature sets. You're the legislature. You could set a guideline as to how much she could reduce the fine and limit her ability to go below that, if you
Okay.
want to.
That's new information because that sure hasn't been our experience. Okay, go ahead, Mr. McClendon.
So one of the things I would like added in there is if it's a health and life safety issue, it should be a unanimous vote by the council for the town's position on lowering the fine. So you take a truck stop that says, we don't care, and they run up a $200,000 fine, right? And finally they go, we got to take this serious, and they fix it. And then they come back to us and say, we want our fines reduced. I think it should take a unanimous vote from the council for that recommendation to go to the magistrate. I understand the magistrate can do whatever they want, but I think the recommendation at that point should be a unanimous vote by the council. That way, when these code enforcement cases are going through, you can say yours is going to be treated as a health and life safety issue. And keep in mind, if you want to try to get your fines reduced in the future, you're not going to just need to convince the town manager. You're going to need to convince 5 unanimous people sitting on the council to reduce your fine. So you really need to take this code enforcement issue seriously, because every day it runs up, you're going to have a hard time getting this reduced.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point. And to just expand on that, my comment was that it's my understanding that with our code enforcement process, it's a very lengthy and long one until we get to the point where we're starting to assess somebody fines, okay? And that at the point where fines are starting to accrue, even if it's not a life safety issue, it's somebody who has thumbed their nose at the rules, been advised of them in every possible way and iteration that they could be advised of them, has thumbed their nose at them for some period of time. And your point taken, when they go to sell the land, or when they go to, when it gets to whatever, some number that is scary to them, $100,000, well, then they suddenly say, oh, well, maybe I better start taking this seriously and do something now. But I don't know why we should give, to be honest with you, any lien reduction to somebody who's thumbed their nose against the rules of the town for any period of time. I think that there should be, you give them like 6 months to come into compliance. And if they are showing that they're trying to come into compliance, then we don't start assessing fines. So at the point where it gets to fines, it's somebody that is that is seriously
Belligerent.
belligerent. I was
Good vocab.
tip of my
Good
tongue.
vocab word. Lisa.
No, I mean, we have people that tell our code officers F you. I mean, we have that, I had a past code officer tell me this particular person said F you to them on more than one occasion. Like, they don't care. So, but then it's my understanding that now that person's fines have gotten to some significant point, and now that person wants to all of a sudden start working with the town. Well, I'm not in favor of reducing his fines at all. For 3 years, he's been telling us to F off. Well, sorry for your luck. I think we should charge him 100%. I don't think there should be a lien reduction, but that's just my personal.
Do we have the legal
Lisa?
capacity, if the magistrate has ruled, to do what Todd says?
We would do it before then, because the town takes a position like it was explained. When they go to the magistrate says, okay, the landowner wants a 50% reduction.
No, I
That's
understand
the
that,
town's
but
position.
the magistrate has been involved in the case up to that point.
Mhm.
Would we then be able to claw that back and put it under our purview to make that decision?
Oh, so Glenn, I think that's a question for you. I think it's okay, because what happens, I think, Lisa, is that you first do the notice of violation, you're found guilty, and then you're fine assessed. And that's typically where we end at that point. Then it goes into the lien.
Sure.
So that would probably be when they want to do the
understand that part.
reduction, they'd have to submit something. And I think at that point, you probably could go, but Glenn, maybe you can answer, does the special magistrate still have the jurisdiction, or can it be switched to the council and go back to her?
So ultimately, the lien is always the town's lien, right? It's your lien. You're owed the money. The town is owed the money. You've given the magistrate the authority to do certain things, including reducing a fine. We just talked about putting a limit on the reduction. What council member is mentioning is perhaps a way to further restrict the magistrate by saying health safety cases don't go to the magistrate, they go to the town council. I've not seen that yet. I'm not saying it's undoable, but we could look into that certainly, and get the direction as to what you want, do the research, and then bring you back an ordinance that tries to accomplish what you want.
But Glenn, let me ask you, I guess I'm thinking, is it okay? So someone files a lien reduction. So can we make in the process the first step, if it's a life, health, safety, of course, that'd have to be defined, but in a life, health, safety request, that it goes to the council first for a recommendation, and then we would then send it to the special magistrate. Is that an okay process?
We're gonna have to research that. Again, this is definitely creative thinking, and maybe we could do this. But again, it'd be amending the ordinance to lay that out. You might have to have the order that the magistrate first enters, making it clear that this is a life, health, safety issue. Because that's the key language that you want in there. So I think it's doable, but we could research it and work towards that.
Yeah, I don't want them to research it.
Yeah, I mean, as it stands today, the town, when they go to the magistrate, the town has a position and they say, we're okay. So I'm just saying, instead of the manager making that position, it's the council making that position on health and life safety issues. So that way we direct the town manager, no, you didn't get a unanimous vote to reduce it here. And town manager, you can't reduce it at all. When you go to the magistrate, you let the magistrate know, no, the town is in the position, no reduction whatsoever. That's our recommendation. That's what we want.
So are you saying, let me just make sure I get it, Todd. So are you suggesting we put in a provision in the ordinance that says on life, health, safety, lien requests, there is no reduction, which you can do that?
No, there could be a reduction so long as you get a unanimous vote from the council.
So
Any reduction on life, health, safety requires a unanimous vote from council prior to going to the magistrate.
But
And I don't think we need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of legal research on this. I think that we can just put something in as simple as that.
I still think the magistrate should have the independence to make the decision, but for the town's position, the unanimous vote from the council would say, no, we are not okay with any reduction at all. The magistrate could still say, I'm throwing it all out. I think they should have that leeway to do that, the magistrate. But for the town's position, it should be a unanimous vote from the council.
Yeah, I mean, if we're coming up with it, and I can just go turn the light off because that's what I was going to. If we're coming up with a standard, and that's the whole purpose of the ordinance, is so we have a standard and a fee structure, right? That's kind of where we're going. So I think there's a degree of yes, code enforcement can handle, because I don't think every fee reduction has to go to the manager either. The two interprets the code and how the code's done. So the director of the code enforcement, could be the interpreter.
Standards
The
director.
community standards director. I'm sorry, Karen. Thank you, Mayor.
I mean, it should never be less than what it cost us to do it.
never.
It should-
Right.
I mean,
No,
that's
absolutely.
my one hard
And-
stop. We
Yeah.
should never not recoup all of our costs. I'm including gas to go to the magistrate
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
I'm saying all of our
Gas to
costs
drive
with
to
a
town.
nice little cushion,
Right.
because anytime it gets to that point, it's,
But yeah, no, that's where I'm going. So if that's the purpose behind this, if we're coming up with a standard, and the standard needs to be, if it's life and health safety, yeah, it takes a unanimous vote or even a super majority. But I mean, a unanimous vote. I like unanimous. That's like a,
The idea
Can I
of
make a
unanimous-
suggestion?
I get you.
When you're out there and you're citing people, you can say, this is gonna be treated as life safety.
Yeah.
And this is the hurdle you're gonna have when your fines
You're
start.
gonna have to
going.
get up 5 people to agree to reduce your fee.
So you're gonna have a hard time. So whatever your fee is, you can kind of plan on, that's probably what you're gonna be paying, right? This isn't gonna, we're not gonna play this game where it's 100,000 and we're gonna take
Yeah.
5,000 for it later
Right.
on.
And we might actually,
say F you for 5 years
Right.
and then do something about it.
and we might actually look at, there might be a couple other instances like tree mitigation or something like that, where we might take a hard stance as well. Not every single thing, because somebody, they didn't cut back their safe site corner. We're not, I don't think we're going to hammer that home. But like you said, well, I know, but like I say, that's what I'm saying. And the way it works, and you know,
I thought-
I reiterate things a lot. I'm sorry, but you know, the way it works is if you're coming into compliance, generally speaking, that's what, you know, most places call code compliance, not code enforcement, because it's a compliance measure. It's a effort to make folks compliance. A lot of stuff
Community
that
standards.
community standards, a lot of that stuff is safety measures for things and things like that. So if you're working toward the same goal, a lot of times fines don't get assessed,
Correct.
right? If you're cited for building a building without a permit and you go get the permit and you start working on it, a lot of times fines don't get assessed. So, you know, so I think if
That was my
yeah,
point earlier. The people that are getting assessed are people that have
Right.
egregiously.
I wish to make a point of clarification. I think that some unpermitted uses might be considered life, health, safety. So for instance, the trucking that was mentioned before, that seems like it falls into life, health, safety. If you're doing industrialized operations,
Right.
it seems like that would fall
100%.
into health, life, health, safety.
Installing gas pumps when you didn't have permission to
If
do
you're
it.
putting
yeah.
construction debris in the ground, that's
Life,
life,
health,
health,
safety.
safety.
but on the flip side, you know, and I think you and I have had this conversation, Karen, you might have been, you know, as our code enforcement staff blossoms, right? Our code and compliance staff, community standards blossoms, you know, the education tool, because I can tell you, I've had, you know, conversations with folks even before I was on council, and they're like, nobody around here understands the difference between ag and not ag, right? Bona fide ag and what you can do and what you can't do and things like that. So whoever's out there, you know, doing this, I know we're a little off topic, but who's ever doing the citation or the NOV, we need to make sure that those folks are educated to the nth degree, especially in that aspect of things. Because to say, oh, this is an ag business, and you know, a few of us sitting at this table, maybe all of us sitting at this table, and a few of us in the room could look at it and go, that is not an ag, that's not an ag business. I don't care what you call it. It's not, you know, your retail establishment, not an, in support of an agricultural, bona fide agricultural business. You know, that's because we want them to have the confidence when they step up there and they issue the NOV that they're doing the proper thing, right? And that they're, you know, that they because somebody that doesn't have confidence in that, when they issue the NOV, nobody's going to care, right?
Well, that's.
You've got somebody going, no, look, you're wrong. This is the rule. This is this. Here, you can meet the magistrate and prove us wrong, right?
I think to the
Yeah.
point you're making, Paul, is that code compliance is exactly what you say. It's compliance. It's not penalty. It's compliance. We want to try to get you to meet what is required. And it's not black and white, right? And you have to have some ability to have some leeway, because I mean, unfortunately, if somebody comes in and right away admits they're wrong, wants to make the change, should they be treated the same as somebody who basically thumbed their nose at you? Right?
No.
So those are the things that hopefully you have.
We've already kind of addressed all of this. We've already
Yeah.
said that we really only ever get to the penalty
That is
phase
correct.
when people thumb their nose at
Right.
us. So we don't really need to keep
Okay.
talking about when people are trying to be compliant.
Gotcha.
And, you know, and fail to whatever. Mr. Torsivia's got his finger up. Don't you have one of those little hands, Glenn, that everybody has?
For some reason, it doesn't work. So one question and one comment.
Okay, go ahead.
If the council is going to consider every case as to whether it's going to be unanimous or not, then are you having an actual hearing, and are you delaying the process by having a council decision? And the suggestion comment would be, as Karen pointed out, the magistrate listens a lot to staff's recommendation. Staff historically is lenient and recommends, you know, significant reductions. You can simply provide staff the direction that you shall not reduce life safety issues, period, and have staff make that recommendation to the magistrate. Go 3 or 4 months and see how that works before you create more work for yourselves and having to consider each case by case whether you're unanimous or not on it.
I don't think we're talking about case by case.
We're talking about.
We're talking about
case by case.
egregious cases.
We're talking about egregious life safety that we're asking the manager to seek a council vote prior to making her recommendation.
How many would we have
Right. No,
conceivably? Yeah.
how many fine reductions hearings have we had? And how many have been health and life safety or what you would consider health and life safety in the past year?
I don't have it off the top of my head, I'll be honest with you. We don't have that many lien reductions, but I will tell you, I have two right now that have been holding off pending the discussion today.
Health, you consider health.
You know what? I didn't look at them because I wanted to really get a feel for what was going on here, but most of the time it's not life, health, safety most of the time.
Less than 6 a year.
Yeah.
So it's really no different than a land use type of application. They bring it before the council and we say yes or no.
Yeah,
Would it be
exactly.
quasi judicial at that point or?
That's a Glenn question, but he turned his camera off.
I think it's something that we're using to advise the manager on what
Right.
position we want her to take. So I don't
They're-
see why
yeah.
it's quasi judicial because
Yeah, we're not making a
the one
ruling.
making the ruling. Ultimately, the magistrate is making the ruling. All we're doing is saying that on health, life, health, safety request for reduction, we request that the manager seek a unanimous vote from council to make the recommendation.
And it could be on consent. It could be on the consent agenda,
It could be just consent.
right? 5 of us vote for the consent agenda and it goes through and, you know.
Yeah, and if somebody thinks somebody might have a case, we could pull it.
Right.
And they could be here, they could argue their case, but it's just an application. And I think I kind of get what Glenn's, I'm not percent to read his mind, but a year seems like a lot, but if we make it 3 months, guess what? They're going to be back in 3 months and and we're just going to keep kicking a can. So, I like the year. Listen, you come in here and you want to do a lien reduction because you think it was unfair, whatever the case may be. Oh, you got rid of the 55-gallon drums, so you think you're good now. Whatever the case may be.
Polluted the aquifer.
Exactly. So, a year is a chance for you to, if we say no, we're not going to do a lien reduction, it's a chance for that person to become even more compliant, right? And to really put, especially somebody that's been thumbing their nose or whatever.
They have to be compliant before we get to that point.
I agree, but I'm just saying, you and I might look at something called, varying differences, I guess. my
Let the
point,
girls
so.
talk. They've had their.
Sorry.
Ladies, do you know who was first?
Marge.
Oh.
Okay, it has been so frustrating waiting for something to give us a little bit of meat between,
100%.
our decisions. I mean, we sit here so frustrated with the lack of enforcement of health and safety stuff. I mean, it's just egregious.
Lisa.
That was easy.
So March just moved her stand. That's it.
So in your scenario, you said the person should have done their due diligence on, and they purchased the property. Wouldn't the town be getting money in that circumstance when the property changes ownership? Isn't that connected to the title of the property?
So if you have a mortgage company, typically that is the case because the mortgage company won't issue a mortgage unless you clear title.
The cash.
But if you pay cash, there's nobody who's there to say, hey, pay off your lien.
Got it.
They'll just go ahead.
So
and file.
back to the
Kinda like,
actual.
surprise,
Yeah.
you paid cash and now you've got a big.
Yes, and you need more cash. So back to the original question that you posed, basically preventing them from asking again for a year. I think that no matter how long that time frame is, how many appeals do they get? Do they get one appeal, right? And how soon can that be? So I think a year, given the slovenly pace of how this normally goes, maybe a year actually is realistic. But I think
I
they
agree.
probably only get one appeal to that
I agree.
and not more than that.
But I think what's been so frustrating in the past is all of a sudden fines just disappear.
Yeah, we know that.
Right.
I
Yeah,
think that's
we
the whole
can't-
conversation.
Can't continue to sit here as a council and feel.
You can't
so-
justify it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, because there's
It's-
real staff costs, like I said, associated with all of this. And if we're not even getting our staff costs, I mean, I can think of
Well, this started with the
recent
previous
history
manager.
that I won't bring, yes, the story with the previous manager, but that fine was reduced to significantly less than it cost the town to pursue that
Some of them
situation.
were zero.
Wow.
No.
And it's just, it's unacceptable. I mean,
Yeah, since I've been here, I haven't done one. So I can just tell you since April. So, and again, like I said, I had two because I felt it was important to hear from you as to the direction, as to where you want to go.
Did
And
we give you enough information
I
to move
think,
forward? Okay.
I think you did. I think Glenn and I can work together and bring something back. I didn't know if you wanted to do the interim or whether you just want me to go forward with the ordinance. Because again, I can bring back first reading. I think I can make it in August because it's not a development, so I don't have to worry about that. And then we could get it done fairly quick.
At first reading, we can make any changes if we don't like your consent, your compilation of what we all said here today. For
So.
some reason, or if somebody has any questions, we can
Right.
always we can tweak it at first reading, I guess is what I'm saying. So I would say go right into first reading so we can get it moving.
Mayor, you're becoming a planner using the word tweaking. That's a planning term. You're learning.
I'll just
Yeah.
add that to my resume.
I just want to circle back before we go. So I just want to make sure it's one appeal. The 1 year is good. We're making it a unanimous decision regarding life, health, safety.
Correct.
Is there a number that we have if it's not life, health, safety?
You know, on whether they're defined, but a unanimous decision on what the recommendation
Recommendation
is
is.
to be.
Okay.
I think
Lane
the
reduction.
decision here is we must at least recoup our administrative. costs.
Correct.
Well,
And let me
aren't
put that in.
fees and fines different from each other? Don't they typically in the magistrate's order will say the fees are this much and then the
Yeah,
fines are this amount?
they do administrative fees, which we usually figure out, you know, the hourly rate, how much time it takes, and then we go ahead and try to
There's no
apply for
reduction.
that. But, you know, again, I always like, and Lisa's point is well taken. You should never be out of pocket costing this because your neighbor shouldn't have to pay for the fact that your neighbor wasn't in compliance, right? So we certainly will make sure we cover both of those. So again, we will bring back, now I didn't know if it was a non-life health safety. Do you have a number that you're interested in that? Like, is it, can't reduce it any less than, you know,
25%.
25?
Reduction or total
The max you could reduce it is 25%.
The minimum threshold is 25%.
of the
I'm
fund,
just throwing
of the
it
amount?
out there.
Yeah. So they could get a 75% reduction.
Correct,
Right. Just-
Maximum.
Yeah,
Max-
max.
Maybe less.
I'm just being clear. That's all. I'm just,
maximum, but our threshold is 25%.
I'm
What do you
good.
think, everybody? You like 25%?
I like
as long, as long as it's cut, yeah.
25%.
Okay.
Or the total amount of fees, whichever is greater.
Right.
Yeah, or,
correct.
so,
Well, the fees are separate. The fees.
We'll get
right,
automatic.
right.
Some public comment on
But I
this?
know the
Right.
public, yeah, let me get out of the way.
Real quick, if I can, before the public comment.
Oh,
Really? No. No.
No cap.
I just was.
Nope.
Never mind. So just quick question. So when you bring this back for first reading, this is a full standard, right? The ordinance is the standard, right? And so
correct.
the fee structure, the fee scale or the pay scale is going to be built into the standard, right?
Glenn, no, I
don't-
think the fees have to be a resolution, if I'm right, and the standards will be the ordinance. So you have.
Okay, so we're going to bring them both at one
Bring
time.
it at the same,
So we're going to read.
the resolution I'll bring on second reading.
Okay. Oh,
because
well,
it doesn't-
we've already had the resolution. Oh, the resolution only takes one, right?
Only takes one reading. That's
Okay,
why I
so I
include
guess my
second.
point is, I think it's a good opportunity to look at our fee structure for this endeavor, right? Our compliance department, make sure that we are, we're definitely covering our cost.
You must have ESP. In
Right.
August, I'm bringing back.
Okay,
the
I'm-
entire community standard.
I'm sure you are, and that's, that's why you're doing what you're doing. I'm just, yeah, so. yeah.
Absolutely.
We have Miss.
Ms. Suchi?
Oops.
Cassie Suchi, thank you for doing the work. It was good. Thank you all. This was discussed once before and then Marge was on it. And I was reading the transcript and you guys must have read my transcript because you all had the same comments almost as the previous council and Marge was on it. This has already been addressed in our code already and it's not 4 pages. And it says the special magistrate to consider applications for lien relief. All applications for lien reduction, satisfaction, and releases or other matters relating to relief from liens shall be directed to the special magistrate. The magistrate shall consider the written request, the statements of the applicant, the authorized agent for the applicant, the recommendation of town administration, and you could put town council if you want, and any other information deemed relevant and render a decision on the application. And the culmination of the discussion when this came up before was it was addressed instead of this 4-page policy that has all these little intricacies in it. And we pay this magistrate for her expertise to make these judicial decisions. I've been to these meetings. She does take recommendations from the town. Perhaps the only thing you may want to add is the health and safety issue or whatever you want to add, but the 4 pages has already been addressed. And I just wanted to bring that up. And bravo, you guys are like people that live in this town all have the same thoughts and ideas on our home. So I think the only thing maybe you might want to add is the town council recommendations, which can be, brought to the magistrate, because I think the issue that came up at the last time was this is an independent person that we pay to make this decision. And and I've watched it, they take everybody's recommendation and then they make the decision on those recommendations. So I just wanted to bring that to your point. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other ones?
No.
Okay, so you've got your clear instructions. We're establishing a threshold, establishing a couple of standards just to make it more clear and let people know what they're getting into before, and give your officers a little bit of teeth going out there.
And again, big on education. So we're going to put it on the website once we get everything done. So everybody will know up front. We'll make sure everybody in the office is aware so nobody gets the wrong information.
Oh, don't sit down. You're next.
Hi, Judy. Thanks for letting me stay at your house. Okay, the next item, number 22, is discussion of interlocal agreement with Palm Beach County regarding impact fees. And I'm not even sure why we're having this conversation since
Agreed.
we have no transportation impact fee in our town. Why would we even have this discussion?
Happy not to have it, but the reason that.
It just seems kind of dumb.
Can we not, can we?
So too, but we were sent the request to join the county's interlocal agreement.
I say let's not waste 1 second on something that
Okay.
absolutely doesn't even
Thank
relate to our town.
So that begs the question though. So it is an agenda item, right? So just,
It's a discussion.
yeah, so, but that begs the question, I happened to be watching a few minutes of the BOCC meeting today about the CSX
Right.
thing that's going on. And after I didn't shut it off, and that's all I heard was, is there a need for a presentation? No. Okay, motion to approve, motion to disapprove, it's like boom, boom, boom. It's like bam, bam, so I don't know. Is that something we can do in the past, in the future, if we all don't think that there's a need for a presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Okay. So we're gonna just strike number 22 because
No, we don't want to play their game.
it's not relevant to our town.
Yeah.
We're on to item number 23. Is that you, Jeff?
Well, it's actually Mr. Flame.
Mr. Who?
He's on.
Mr. Tony Flame with Sheltering Palms, who is on the Zoom.
Yes. I think all of you, except for perhaps Councilman member McClendon, met with a representative of Sheltering Palms to discuss their offer. It's a situation in which they are new to the property as owners. They acquired it through a foreclosure. They did not do their due diligence prior to making the loan and did not realize that there was a conservation easement on the property. When they actually would have viewed the property, they wouldn't have recognized that there was a conservation easement because the trees had already been denuded. They did acquire the property through the foreclosure. They are trying to sell the property. What they would like to do is eliminate the conservation easement and pay the town for that privilege. They have offered $150,000. I can go through some of the discussions and thoughts, but I think since you have all, been apprised of this issue, you may want to comment and give direction.
Okay, but before we continue, I know that when I had my meeting, it ended with me having several questions that I wanted the answers to, like how many of these such conservation easements exist in town? And what are the condition of said conservation easements? In other words, do we have 20 and 5 of them are denuded and we only know about this one? So my question is, do you have the answer to those questions? Because without the answer to those questions, I don't know how we can discuss this, because I don't know how we can make an arbitrary decision about one conservation easement when we don't know the status of
Agreed.
the conservation easements
We-
within the town.
We do know where they are. We have not done
How many are there?
there are 12 others.
There are 12 others that were designated by South Florida. So that's the answer to
Well,
my first question.
They are conservation easements. It's
Okay,
it's
so
typically got-
designated 12 conservation easements in Lochside Two Groves, the town of Lochside Two Groves. Do we know the status of any of them? We know this one's denuded. Do
we
we
do-
know about anything about the other 11?
We do not, we have not completed the review, and so we're not in a position to comment on the status of them.
Okay, well,
I'm with Mayor Kane that when I met with them, my big concern was we don't have a policy that
and I'm
is
not willing to set a policy.
that is
without
broad
knowing what I'm
enough
setting a
to
policy
take,
on.
yeah, to take it piecemeal. So I'm with Ms. Kane on that.
And I feel terrible for these people because I understand the position they're in, but I'm not just willing to take some arbitrary number.
Well, this kind of
because-
goes back to our earlier conversation on the last item, so.
Yeah.
So just, so we have 12 properties total,
We have 12
right?
conservation easements.
12 conservation easements, and we know which properties and where they're located, correct? Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, we have satellite imagery, et cetera. So I mean, we can tell really quick if something's been denuded, right?
Well, completely denuded, but not
I guess,
not sending people out there to actually do a look at the properties is where we're
But
at.
it's
I
not.
know.
And
So you know which ones appear to be and which ones appear to be compliant, correct? Is that what you're saying? I mean, we don't have to send somebody, I mean, I guess my point is we can look at satellite imagery, right? GIS imagery, and be able to, you can kind of tell if it's been cleared or it hasn't been cleared.
Our approach,
Right.
our approach was going to be that we would have to send somebody out there to actually visually look at things, because we don't want to be in a situation that the satellite photo was from last year and 2 weeks ago, everything was eliminated. So
So somebody's got to go visit 12 properties. And
yes.
if one's 11, yeah, sorry, Mr. Flame. So somebody, we gotta visit 11 properties. And then, I mean, are we gonna, I mean,
I want to know whether the people who own the properties are even aware that they have a conservation easement on their
Well,
property.
generally-
That's another one of my questions. No, because,
no,
maybe they don't.
well, I was gonna say, generally speaking, most of them that kind of go in, I can tell, I know of one that a cell phone tower went on it, and they were forced by the county because, when they got granted their variance from the one neighbor, don't get me started on the whole thing. They were, a 1 acre easement was enforced, and it's still there today.
I don't know where that one is.
Yeah, so I mean, because the individual asked me before I was even here, he's like, "Oh, I'm doing this. You think they'll let me move it?" I said, "You could try, but I don't think so." So I mean, if we have that list, yeah, I'm with you. I think we need to have that answer before and kind of I set a precedent. I mean, how do you set a precedent without knowing?
Well, I mean, if we just randomly throw out 150,000, I mean, we're just.
Yeah.
We're selling conservation.
Right, and I'm not willing to do that. I think Marge was up next.
Yeah, isn't there a list that could be produced and given to the council members now?
Yes. We can get you the list. You mean the list of the conservation
Yeah.
easements? Yes, we can get that to you
Now,
at this very second. Or do you mean?
this meeting?
Uh,
Before we walk out of here.
What are we gonna do with it? Can you email it to us?
How about emailing it to us with a little bit of information? I like that
Yeah,
idea.
Maybe tomorrow.
Well, I mean,
I don't want to promise that I can put my hands on
By
it
9
in
a.m.
10 minutes.
the other, sorry, I'm gonna defer to Todd for a sec because he had a light. He put his light on like a good guy.
God, that's gonna be like the running joke of this entire.
So I don't have enough information to make a decision on this tonight, but with that said, I'm not sure what the other properties have to do with this one. I mean, if the other ones have all been destroyed, or if all of them are pristine, what does it have to do with this one?
I think it's a policy question. Like, for me, it was, I wasn't comfortable taking a position on one particular conservation easement. I wanted to understand if we were going to adopt a broader policy on this, because I think, and Francine can confirm this, there's been some discussion of creating conservation easements to encourage land, saving the canopy and some of the other wildlife
Like using
stuff.
this money, whatever this money is, to buy other areas where we need drainage and conservation and create drainage.
Well, in my,
So before we set a policy of like whether 5 acres is worth $150,000, I'm just throwing out numbers, I'm
Yes.
not doing whatever. We need to know where we stand.
yes, and I think too, one of my questions is if it's a conservation easement, usually there's an entity that conservation easement is held by. So if it's, say, Audubon Society, there's limitations on tree trimming and stuff like that. So
is true.
different conservation entities will allow certain maintenances and others don't. So I think that's a broader conversation that would impact the decision on this particular property tonight.
Well, if this conservation easement belonged to because they're the ones that dictated the conservation easement. Am I correct, Jeff?
Correct.
Yes.
So that so does it now belong to us?
Yeah, they transferred them all.
They transferred them all so they now belong to us. I think just devil's advocate, I mean, there's options here. They could replant, they could whatever, and I think they're just trying.
Been doing a good job of monitoring them.
So we already have the tree mitigation process in place that has dollar amounts and things that are, attached to it. I mean,
Do we know if they're all wetlands?
yeah, well,
Is it fair to say that they're all wetlands, or you?
No,
this one was not.
You don't know.
They're not.
It might have been originally though, and maybe.
No, this was not a
It was
wetland.
not.
Okay.
Because there's adjacent property has a wetland on it that's designated from the Army Corps. So, and that's a whole different, map. And
Town council, I am sending you a map of where all the conservation easements are, and they are hyperlinked to the conservation easement, so you can look at that.
Thank you.
And do you know if there's been any reduction on their property taxes over the years because of that easement? Do we know that? Because a lot of times you can get reductions on your property taxes. So had they been getting a reduction on their property taxes for 20 years because of this?
The Presbyterian Church has a
That's what
conservation
one of them
easement.
is, yeah.
That's one of the big ones.
Yep.
Yeah.
Their tax exempt anyway. So they're not getting a reduction.
Don't give them ideas.
So
I don't know if that has been factored in. I know that at one point in time it had an ag classification. I'd have to look at it to see whether or not it still does. And whether that's warranted. I don't know. Mr. Flame has hung on through last week's meeting and he is on now. I don't know if you want to hear from him or
Sure.
he needs information from us.
Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. Unfortunately, we had these conversations last month, and I was hoping there would be some progress so I could take it back to the board of directors of the foundation and be able to give them some guidance on how we can move forward. But if it's going to take some more time to develop a policy, then I guess that's the way council wants to go.
I think the consensus is that we don't feel like we have enough information to develop a policy, for a variety of reasons.
No, I understand that, and I can see the logic in it. I was hoping, this being a nonprofit organization that came into this property, I don't want to say unwillingly, but it was somewhat unwillingly that there would be an alternative approach to being able to come up with a solution that keeps everybody happy.
Anybody have anything that they? Paul, you got something you want to say?
Todd, you got something to say before I say anything? No, I get what you're saying, Tony. I mean, and I get where you guys are coming from, but you know, the whole thing is there's a lot of things that go on around here without a policy, and they didn't have teeth and whatever, and that's kind of how this conservation easement ended up where it is. You know, so I think maybe, you know, and I realize that you know, I agree with Mr. McClendon that, you know, this shouldn't really have any bearing on other stuff, but I think we need to see what we're holding in the basket before we, you know, and I think, you know, not saying I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I would think maybe if it came back next month, we might have a better understanding of what's out there. You know, I mean, it could be, you know, it could be 12 total acres of holly trees, you know, and we would know where to go from there. You know, it could be, you know, we have a better understanding. So I think at this point, maybe we can bring it back next month after we get a chance to review.
We find out from Palm Beach County if they have a procedure on how to deal with this. If somebody wants to get rid of their conservation easement that's still an unincorporated, do they have a procedure that they go by?
We'll get that. There's
They
no
might
reason
already
not
have
to.
something, right?
Yeah,
And we can
we'll
go,
get
oh,
that.
this makes sense. This would work.
Mhm. By the way, this particular one is number 11 on your map. And
Okay.
additionally, I don't know if anybody remembers, but this property was subdivided. And the property that Mr. Flame, that Sheltering Palms owns is only half of the property.
Well, no,
It's 20 acres.
And I want you to know,
they're
Mr.
both-
Flynn,
they were not subdivided. They're two separate parcels that were acquired together, but they're the original 20s. So
Forgive my misstatement of the words.
Mr. Flame, I think we all feel, particularly after having met with you, you're a nice guy. And I think that we realize that you're in a very, your organization has found itself in a very uncomfortable position. But we have to, we have to create a policy. And once we do create that, it's something that has to be followed and sets a precedent for other decisions that are made regarding these conservation easements, and conservation and preservation of our rural community is just a key tenet of this town. So I think we're going to have to bring it back next month with some answers to our questions. We'll have the maps. Is it possible, Karen, Jeff, to do even just cursory inspections of these properties between now and next month's meeting to know what the status of each of them are? I mean, I know one of them, like Paul said, the one over near his house, that one's fine. It's been fenced off
I
and
got
it's
a
been
nod
fine.
from Karen, so yes.
Okay, so we can have that. And then I think we can make a much more educated decision so that we make the right decision, sir. That's all we're looking to do.
Okay,
That was
I appreciate
not even
that.
on this list.
Todd, did you have something you wanted to add?
I was just looking at Paul because Paul brought up the map, and it looks like where the 47 acres for our proposed RV park has one on it also.
It does, but that's been recognized in their site plan.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir, for being here and for hanging in there. We certainly appreciate it.
Mayor?
Okay,
We have two public comments.
we have two public comments. Okay, go ahead, two
Ms.
public
Suchi?
comments.
Joe Siciliano, 1530 B Road. You guys know how I feel about trees. So I have an idea. Since there is a very keen group of conservation advocates who formerly sit on the ULDC, which has been put to sleep by SB 180, perhaps those people could look at your conservation easements that are ERM or whatever. There may be more out there. Could there be more determined by other
Well, there's one
groups?
of that's not on this map.
Right.
so-
it's 20
So-
acres.
There's maybe 5 people that would be glad to sit and help Jeff and Karen find some solutions and answers and determine where they are and what they look like, because a lot of them might not have just been denuded. They may have been dried up because they got land built up around.
Well, they're not wetlands. They're conservation easements.
But they're not, some of them are wetlands because they are on the ULDC map. That's where.
No,
that's
I
where
agree,
Francine
but they're
pulled them
not
up.
all, I guess my point is they're not all wetlands, so.
What we need to
yeah.
know.
And you've got 5 people that.
Not
Speaking
our-
out of turn? Okay, 2.
2 out of 5, right?
2 out of 5. So there you go.
Okay, you've got some volunteers,
you.
Jeff and Karen.
Ms. Suchi?
You want to talk to Joe? Well.
Cassie Suchi, glad I let Joe go because that's a great idea. We have conservation, like the mayor said, we need to preserve our canopy. We have these conservation easements, even if they, mowed over them, they're ours, and we replant the trees on those easements. I remember a while ago, didn't we have an easement transversed our town east and west, some railway system, which would have been a fabulous trail to do an intersection in our town instead of having just do, north and south, but we gave it back to people. This is something that belongs to us. We're a rural town. We want to protect the canopy. Even if they did violate their easement and mowed over it or whatever, then why don't we, whatever extra money we have, we plant the trees back on it. So I don't think we should, I think a policy is a great idea. So we have an idea and we're all thinking on the same page. But I think we definitely need to consider not selling something that's precious like our tree canopy and our conservations easements in our town.
One option that we could do, I mean, I agree, one option we could do is, with something like,
For a second.
oh, Marge had her light on.
It's actually before them, and you never put your.
Sorry,
light-
Marge.
Go ahead.
Lady, a few words usually.
Yeah, she'll be quick.
I know.
She actually wanted to speak, I believe, directly to Joe, did you not?
They can all be recorded on a
the-
floppy.
Yeah.
She was actually wanting to speak directly to you, I believe.
Back before we even incorporated, there was a group of residents working with about these conservation easements that were in our town. And when we then incorporated, and I was on the council, the first council, hunted me up and produced this list and got us to present it as we accept these conservation easements. We had to, as a now town, accept them. So they were then given to Jim Fleischman, who was supposed to come up with all kinds of information about these. So it's only been 20 some years that we've been waiting for this information, but you'll get it, right, Joe?
You can't rush
Come
into
on.
stuff like that, Marge.
Okay. So I'm anxious to see the map. I've seen the list. I'd like to see the map. I know where some of the easements are. And I know there were some other things that were given to us by the county, like 22nd Street off of C Road. That was given to us by county. And we had to accept it. And there were little pieces of roads and driveways, that they gave us back then also. And we've accepted them in various ways. Richard, you probably know some of the. Okay.
No,
Okay.
we've been doing some lighting up over here, so I apologize. Yeah, it's just an option, just because after we leave here tonight, we won't be able to talk about it. So, just an option, I think, going forward as we try to come up with this policy, the monies, whether we think that's too small or we need more money or whatever to do, to buy back the piece of dirt that's sitting there now. Those monies would go similar to the tree mitigation money, right? So it would be designated for sole purpose of either replanting trees or, there might be there might be small properties out there inside that are, worthless for building because they are so low, because they are a wetland, right? That we could purchase as in put a boardwalk in or something as a walking trail or something, just to kind of feed off our, so that's, it's just looking for money to do things and et cetera. So, that's just, I think that's something to keep in mind, that we might not just be, selling back a piece of dirt that should have had trees on it, but we might be, actually
Right, and-
protecting something for the
And
future.
by the same token, if we can come up with a reasonable amount for this that's already denuded, I mean, let's face it,
Right.
and let these people be able to sell their property and then purchase another similar piece of property
Right.
and plant trees on it or use it as I mean, that would be something to consider, but you have to replace like with like. I mean, it's already gone. There's
Yeah.
there's nothing we can do about that.
Right.
It's already gone. It's just like the people that come in the weekend and
Yeah, unfortunately.
clear cut their property. It's done. It's a done deal. So it's not about punishing Mr. Flame and his organization for what someone else did. It's about coming up with a reasonable solution. So
Yeah.
let's move along so we can get done before 9 o'clock, guys. Oh, wait, she's talking to you again.
One of the things that I think should happen with your committee is that you come up with guidelines as to what they are required to maintain this as a conservation area. I mean, just because you ignore it and let it grow wild, does that make it a conservation area? I don't know. I mean, there must be standards that they
I
have
guess it
to
depends on
follow.
if it's a wetland or what a
Yeah,
canopy or what
yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Well, and wetlands just, they're mitigated by dollars and cents. I mean, you can drive, if you can get in Homeland through the gate right now, there's plenty of wetlands that are being developed, right? So they're just mitigated with dollars and cents to the right organization, and you no longer have a wetland on your property, right? So that's why I say, we have some that are wetlands. Not to say that it couldn't be developed, but depending on how bad it is, as far as how low. But so it's just food for thought, because if somebody has a wetland on their property, all they have to do is get the right organization, the right amount of money, and it's mitigated and it's done, and they'll clean it right off.
Okay, perfect.
One
Wait,
thing,
One more comment.
Okay, good.
One more comment for the ULDC, since Joe's volunteered him. I think along with what Marge mentioned, perhaps establishing a minimum of acreage. Like if you have 5, maybe it's a minimum of a half acre or a quarter acre, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Is that
What
something?
must be left in conservation?
Yeah,
so they
what,
fill up the rest?
yeah, to make it worthwhile, right? Like if they want to do like an eighth of an acre on 10 acres, it's not really much of a conservation easement.
You're
That's right.
talking future, you're not existing, right?
Yes, if they're going to come up with a policy, yeah.
Yeah, because I know like the Presbyterian Church is 8 acres, but I think less than 2 are conservation.
Right.
yeah, and
Okay.
just one thing to clarify, because Mr. Coleman did make a point about having a boardwalk and accessibility on a purchase of a property that monies could be utilized for. None of these easements are accessible to the public.
Yeah.
Where they
Yeah.
exist at this
Th-
time.
These conservation easements,
They might be, right?
neighbors are not allowed to come in and enjoy them. And so,
On private property.
Yeah.
Right. So whereas if we swapped it out and bought a property, we could create something beautiful like a Marjorie Stoneham Douglas Park and have that for people to come to. Okay, good. We're on to the items that were pulled from the consent agenda. Mr. McClendon, you pulled item number 6.
Yeah, item 6 was putting Cassie Suchi on the planning and zoning. I pulled that because I'm not sure it's appropriate, not because of who it is, but because of her profession. So part of not necessarily a hard set requirement, but it talks about having an engineer, a realtor, an attorney, somebody in the construction trade should be on planning and zoning. Like I said, it's not a hard, that has to meet those requirements, but it's something that we should try to strive for. I think Cassie's a very intelligent person. She'll do the due diligence, all of that, but it doesn't meet those requirements. And
I think it also says government experience.
right.
So
I'm
she
not-
certainly has that in spades and within this town
We
on
hope-
ULDC and everything else. So.
Hmm. I'm not sure that that's what they mean by government experience. I would prefer to see a contractor and somebody in that form. So for that reason, I would make a motion to deny that, having her on there.
I think this was already voted on. This was just housekeeping to get the resolution done.
And I'm voting, my motion is to deny this.
Okay.
Is there a second for that?
Well, do we need to have a second first or a public comment first?
All right.
Do I have a second for Todd's motion? I have no second. Okay, so it fails with, or failing to receive a second. Okay, so then.
Motion to approve it?
There's a comment. There's a public comment.
Ms. Suchi,
Would you like to make a motion to approve it?
did you want to
Another
speak?
motion?
Wait,
She's,
there, hold on a second. We have a public comment first. I'm just gonna.
Ms. Suchi?
Cassie Suchi. So it's the criteria was recommendations and government experience, which I have. I've been on boards, but I also was working with a property appraiser to actually become a property appraiser. Unfortunately, my person passed away. So that was another experience I had besides legislative and government, information. So I just wanted to bring that out. It had to do with real estate as well, but those were just recommendations. And that's all I need to bring.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to
Number
approve?
6,
second.
Resolution 2025-51. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes 3-2.
Item number 8, I believe, Lisa, you were the one who pulled this item.
It was actually 8 and 9
Right,
and the
we're taking
question
them one
is,
at a time.
yeah, well, they're
Let's do
kind of,
8 first.
they're kind of on the same vein. It was just for clarification. This is obviously something that only gets utilized should we be in need of their services. Do we have a number figure for what we have paid for past hurricane cleanup? Do we have kind of an idea of what this is going to run us?
Every cleanup depends on the storm.
Of course.
So I don't think I can answer that question.
We don't even have like a range, like.
I actually have some relevant information
Okay.
that I can share. Okay. So, first of all, I think it was incredibly irresponsible of this council to go a week during hurricane season without passing this. I think it was very irresponsible. Just putting that out there. But anyhow, this is a SWA contract that was cooperatively bid. It's not actually a piggyback bid. It's a cooperative bid. There has not yet to date that I can find, and I've asked a lot of people, been one example where FEMA hasn't reimbursed people when using this particular process. The reason that they do cooperatively bid it as opposed to piggyback, I know piggyback's not the right word anymore. There's some other word you're supposed to use, but
Cooperative
you get what I
purchase
mean.
agreement.
It's a cooperative purchase agreement, right? So the reason they do that is so it can be very comprehensive and include multiple municipalities and be the best bid. Okay, so that's why it's getting reimbursed. The reimbursement rate goes at this: 75% by the federal government, 12.5 by each state and local government. Okay. Notably, in the last 2 Florida events, 90% was paid out by the federal government if the work was done within 30 days after the event. Recently, that has been changed legislatively to 90 days from the event.
Okay.
So we have that for the future. So with the 90% being paid historically for the last 2 events, that only leaves 5% for state and local. So that kind of really eases our burden a lot.
And this only includes town property.
Correct. No, this includes any disaster relief done in the town.
So the residents would have this
Is
picked
the-
up too, or is it just?
Any the debris, this is all about debris pickup. This is if your
Okay.
roof gets blown off and you can get it out to drag it, pull it chop it up, get it out to the side of the road.
Hook a horse
This
to
is
it,
the
pull it inside.
Ashbrook thing that, you know, where they came with all those trucks and very quickly. I mean, we had probably the best response. I can say we had the best response in Palm Beach County between what Ashbrook did for us and what we had some local groups that got together and did for residents to help them get the stuff to where Ashbrook could take it out.
Yeah.
We were really on top of it. But again, I think like to go even a week during hurricane season without this contract in place, I think we slipped up, guys. That's all
Well,
I'm gonna say.
historically, this is not peak hurricane season. It's
Doesn't
like it's
matter.
low.
If a hurricane had happened, it would
Whatever.
have been SOL.
That answers all my questions for both 8 and
Okay,
Thank
so 8 and 9 can be, may I can have a motion?
Motion to approve 8 and 9.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, whether Margie or Lisa seconded that first, I'm sorry, but
Actually, I think all 4 of us.
but it was unanimous. Well, no, okay. And the last one that was pulled was item number 12. I believe that was you, Todd, as well.
12 wasn't 12. 12 wasn't 12. We
12 was
determined
15.
that,
Wasn't full.
and it wasn't pulled
12 was 15.
It's 15.
because we had the wrong agenda when we were doing this.
But I
But
thought
that wasn't
15
consent.
12.
15 wasn't consent.
15 wasn't on
Correct.
consent.
It was
15
part regular
was a
agenda.
regular
Yeah,
item.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. so
No.
what was there?
So
That 12 was,
15 we took care of, right?
yeah.
Yes.
All right, so we're done.
12 was approved,
Well,
right? Katie Lakeman.
15 wasn't, and 47 isn't 47. And town manager, do you have any closing comments, I guess?
I do. I need direction. I sent to council following last council meeting, a marked up copy of the request for letters of interest for legal services that we did last time. And I'm glad I looked right away because it was for interim services. I had a series of questions that I wanted to ask you. I didn't get any feedback from anyone, so, first thing I think I should share with you is that I clarified that we're welcoming both individual and firm responses, and I put in wording for in-house counsel. And later on, I also said for in-house counsel, they need to be able to provide what a budget looks like and an employment agreement. And for the scope of services, I didn't know if you wanted to include anything. I spoke with Karen and we thought maybe we should put a foreclosure attorney in here because we have talked to several foreclosure attorneys. And we need to bring one forward to council. Maybe since we're going out with a request, we would add in a foreclosure attorney.
Okay, Todd, you have something to say?
Yeah, so since the last meeting, I've talked to Jeff extensively about his contract that was presented. The process for finding an outside attorney is going to take some time. And we had discussed, or Jeff and I had discussed potentially going with a contract with him where there is no golden parachute, for lack of a better word, for 6 months, where we come to an agreement with him where he's a town attorney for 6 months. If in 5 months we decide we don't want to continue with him, we can cancel his contract and there is no, penalty on us, even if it's without cause. In the meantime, we can still go out and try to find a firm, because either case, we're going to need a firm in either way, whether we go in-house or not. And I'm just curious if the rest of the council is open to doing something like that. This way Glenn can move on. I'm sure Glenn wants to be out of here. He gave his notice and this would efficiently move that forward. And I'm just curious if there's any other thoughts on that.
Is that a motion?
I have concerns about how many votes it takes to hire and fire. So under your scenario, what does that look like?
We could set his contract up where it's only a 6-month contract and it wouldn't take any, it would just sunset at 6 months, or it would take 3.
And what about all those other perks? And I mean, I think that's a lot more.
I think what he's saying is that we start, if I'm going to interpret this, I think what he's saying is that we consider trying a 6-month no harm, no foul kind of probationary period with the in-house counsel and use that time period as an opportunity to decide whether this model is working for us. This is what we want. This is the right person. And that if at the end of 6 months we decide that that's not working, then he walks away from that position and we walk away from having him in that position. And that would give us the time to actually do a search for another firm in a more responsible way. Is that, is that accurate?
It
If
is.
we could take a break,
Okay.
I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
We recessing?
It's recessed for 5 minutes.
speak on? Mr. Kurtz?
Yes, I did have conversations with Todd at his request, and what I understood that he was proposing, and I think actually what we had talked about was the idea of entering into a multi-year contract. But within the first 6 months, if I was terminated within that time period, then there would be no severance package. But it was not a situation in which it was a 6-month contract, and then we would look forward to an additional contract. It was that after the 6-month period, if I was still employed by the council and somewhere during the term of that contract beyond that, the council elected to terminate, then severance would be there. So that would have put us into the January timeframe as to when the council, if I was still around, would and they decided to terminate me later, then there would be a severance, assuming that it didn't make it all the way to term, and assuming that the termination was without cause. So on a 6-month contract, and I had indicated to you previously that I didn't think a short-term contract was in anybody's best interest. A 6-month contract puts you in the position of you're continuously looking for a new attorney. You'd have to have that availability. You'd have to, have somebody in case it didn't work out. There would be a presumption that the term would end at that point in time, subject to renegotiation and all those kind of things. And that puts the town in this situation of not moving forward. One of the things that we had discussed is the council didn't make a decision the other night. They just kicked everything down the road. And you put your decision point sometime in the September time period. And then whoever is chosen, or whatever entity is chosen to do the job, they're just gearing up and moving forward. And at the same point in time, the organization has to move forward, produce an agenda, a budget, and be in a position to decide how they're going to reorganize. And obviously, if I took a position on an interim basis, then I would not be a part of the administration. And the administration, they would all move forward and do whatever they were going to do, propose how to operate this place. And it's not like there would be a place for me after that. You wouldn't want to hire somebody or have them in that position. We'd be in this just position of standing still, just as you are right now with Mr. Tripsivia and his firm hanging in there for another 2 months, have to move forward. So a 6-month contract, I don't think makes any sense for me, and I don't think it makes any sense for the town. You'll be in this stagnant position. So I didn't want to let the discussion go on. I am not interested in a 6-month position. I am perfectly okay with a multi-year contract where during the first 6 months, if I was to be removed, the town would not have to pay me any severance or anything like that.
Todd, did you want to alter your motion or did you want to, you were first?
Well, so I wanted to discuss, so one of the things I discussed with Jeff with going in in-house attorney is we're gonna be at 300,000 minimum going in-house because by the time we have Jeff, his benefit package, a paralegal, that benefit package, we're at 300,000 minimum for legal services moving forward. And I know before you were on here, Lisa, before Glenn was here, our legal services were a lot less than 300,000 per year, right? So I don't know what happened after I left and Glenn came on, but the legal services have gone up drastically since then. And I'm hoping that we can bring it down to less than 300, but going in-house, we'll keep it at minimum 300,000. We don't have that opportunity to go less than 300,000. So, that's a hesitation on my part. I wasn't crazy about his, with Jeff's contract with the 20-week, without cause termination. That seemed pretty excessive. So yeah, I'm fine with doing the 3-year contract with him with the 6 months that, we can cancel it. Lisa brought up how many people it would take, and it would probably take 4 to cancel at that point. So if we went out and we did letter of interest with firms and we had a firm that came in, I think we would be stuck with, we would need 4 people to move away from Jeff and move to that firm. So that's a valid point that Lisa brought up. So I'm not ready to make a motion yet, but I would like to hear from other council members where their thoughts are.
Paul?
I don't understand. I mean, I understand, but I don't understand. 6-month contract or a 6-month probationary period, it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing. Either we're going to move forward or we're not going to move forward. If you're in an interim basis, you're still part of the administration. You're not sitting on the outside not doing anything. I mean, you're doing the town attorney job now. Somebody else is going to have to do the other stuff. So to say we wouldn't be moving forward doesn't make any sense to me, sir. I mean, we still need to move forward. So, and I mean, I had mentioned something similar to that when we had a discussion the other day. It was a little bit longer. But, I don't, to say, okay, well, we'll put a 6-month in there, no harm, no foul policy. But it still takes a 4-1. So according to the contract, right? So according to the charge, it takes a 4-1. So there really is no, I don't know. We may as well just write the contract. What's the point in the no harm, no foul 6-month?
Well, the difference is it's a 3 or 4 vote, right? So if he does a 6-month contract, it takes 3 people to extend it. So it just
No,
dies.
I get that. No, what I'm saying is, what's the difference in having a 6-month probationary period in the 3-year contract when you still need a 4-1 vote?
Not if it's a 6-month contract that just ends.
No, it's not what I said, Todd. What's the purpose in putting, okay, let me rephrase. What is the purpose of putting a 6-month probationary period in if it still takes a 4-1?
Because then he doesn't get his 20 weeks severance and all the other severance package that goes with it during that first 6 months. We can say.
No, okay. I can see we're doing this tit for tat. I understand he won't get his 20 weeks. I understand all that. My point is, there's no difference. The only difference is he's not getting the severance package. That's the only difference. So if we're not happy in 6 months, he doesn't get the severance package. That is the only difference in the whole thing. So to me, that's not, I don't know. And do we really can we really make a good decision in 6 months? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, still needs to happen, whatever. I don't know.
Well, we have to, if we don't go with him, we've got to make a decision very fast because Glenn's out of here, right? So, and we're not going to start loading up Glenn with more projects.
No, of course not.
We're not going to ask Glenn to do anything. So
I get that. I'm just,
Yeah, we've got to do something pretty quick, is my point.
Lisa, did you have something to add to the conversation?
So, yeah, Todd had asked me, about the concerns of the cost increasing. If you go back to the June 3rd agenda, where Mr. Torsivia provided his breakdown, it is clear that the legal cost from 2022 going forward have just continued to go up.
Escalate.
And he provided additional towns that pay in the 200,000 range based on a breakdown of his report. he's also said repeatedly that the costs have been associated with staff driving certain cost drivers here. I personally think we did make a decision, and that decision was to move forward with going out for a request for qualification or proposal. And I think that I never got into Mr. Kurtz's contract discussion because we moved forward this. I have serious concerns about the contract and questions there. So I think that this goes back to council putting parameters around the spending. I know that the manager has repeatedly stated that she has been telling council since January. That was 7 months ago, and we're only now getting the amendment to the budget for that. I think council should have a policy that the minute that becomes a thing that they're aware of, that amendment should be coming forward within 30 or 45 days. I think that as we move forward into budget discussions, this is a bigger part of that discussion. And I'm perfectly happy with the previous decision. I'm not inclined to do anything temporary. It does kick into a lot of things that contract does require us to jump into with senior management retirement with state of Florida. There's just a lot of moving parts there that I think that going into it in an interim basis like that, and my concern of a supermajority to change it. So
is it fair to say no matter how we change his contract, you would not be okay with it? Is that fair to say?
Well, there's a lot of questions about the contract that I'm based on Mr. Kurtz's responses in the previous conversation would not be suitable for him. So, and mine also would require a not a multi-year contract, something shorter. So
2 years would be okay? Because I think he's open to 2 years, is why I say that.
I think it should be an annual, and I think that we don't know enough. And as I said previously, with an outside attorney, we can turn that faucet off. And it's quite apparent in the information that was provided that other towns can do this cost effectively. Apparently, Loxahatchee Groves in the last 3 years has not been able to achieve that. So
There could be issues on both sides, right? I mean,
There-
we've had 4 or
absolutely.
5 different attorneys from this law firm, right? So I mean, there's a learning curve every time that happens. I mean,
Sure.
we're past all that though, right? We're past pointing the finger is my point.
yes, but I do think that we could do a better job from here
Right.
controlling those costs.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
yeah.
Anybody else have anything to say? Well, I mean, all I can say is I think we're missing an opportunity by not going in-house because I think that it will lend a lot of efficiency. I think that Jeff is already in the loop, and I think that a lot of the delays and not getting stuff done would happen more quickly and more efficiently. And I personally think that the current situation is not okay with the legal counsel that we're getting. And I think we need to take some kind of action now, not some kind of action 2 months from now.
This is a
I
discussion
think
item
that-
and a vote has already been cast. I firmly and strongly disagree with this approach tonight.
Okay, well, thank you. So I feel like we need to take action more quickly than 2 or 3 months from now, as Mr. Kurtz pointed out, when we're already at the end of the budgeting process. And I would like us to take some kind of action tonight.
Your thoughts, 2 year?
Well, it's not mine. I mean, Jeff can speak to that, right? You said you were open to a possible 2 year instead of 3 year. I don't know if that's changed or not.
No, that hasn't changed. What I had suggested to Todd and others was that if 2 years is obviously a little bit less security, it's a little bit less time. And so I would request a higher starting salary.
look at the contract. Okay, do we have some public comment before
But
we?
real quick,
Yeah.
can we do something for the record? You know, I like to protect the public record.
Yes, ma'am.
I raised the issue of what was voted on last week, which was I needed direction on the request for letter of interest. However, it appears that we're reconsidering an item that was voted on, and so a prevailing party can bring an item back for reconsideration. And I think the vote on this last time, I don't recall what the vote on it was.
We actually didn't vote yes or no on his contract, if I'm
Okay.
not mistaken.
Correct.
Yeah.
We voted on doing a letter of interest and go out, but I don't
Okay.
think we voted yes or no on his contract.
No, you didn't address it.
Okay, well, I would like to have that on the record, because however we move forward, I would like to be able to be correct in doing so.
Okay,
Well, if we're gonna
Public
take
co-
if we're gonna take the action to move this forward, then I will make the notes that I want to see changed on the contract, and I will certainly submit them. It involves the health insurance questions, it involves some of the other stuff. So, and I think a contract would have to be completely rewritten anyway with your 6-month proposal.
Yeah, one sentence would be.
One sentence. And I don't think we should require supermajority to change it. So,
So we're going from,
so a simple majority?
I don't think you can because of the town charter.
or the charter.
that's what Todd just said,
Time with a simple majority, you can renegotiate, but you cannot terminate because the charter is the guiding document with regard to that.
Right, so it would take 4.
yeah, anyone that we hire takes a 4-1.
I'm.
That's it, yeah.
I think if we're unhappy after 6 months, I think we're all gonna be unhappy, and I think if we're happy after 6 months, we're all gonna.
But I
be
think we
happy.
all sat here a week ago and said, we need to do our due diligence and we need to, and we need to,
No, I.
publish.
voted no for that.
Oh, I thought you sat right there and said, oh yeah, our due diligence, and you
No.
repaired what I said, but I think I think it's perfect to do our due
Kick the
diligence.
can down the
I'm not
road
trying to
and
kick a can.
not into spending a whole bunch of money that we don't need to spend. That's just my personal.
Well, in all fairness, though, even if we did go with his contract tonight, we're still doing a request for letter of intent to try to get an outside firm. That's still gonna happen anyway. And if, like I said, if we got a firm and in 5 months, we could say, you know what, Jeff, it's not working out. We're gonna make this firm, the attorney that this firm provides, the town attorney. So the due diligence still would be happening, just in the interim, we would be using Jeff.
With a long-term contract. No, I say
That-
absolutely
that is
not.
Gone after 6 months.
Right, that could be canceled without any.
Absolutely not.
With a 4-1 vote.
Correct. And that's what I was saying. The difference from a 6-month contract, it wouldn't take a 4-1 vote, right? It would
He
just,
doesn't want to do a 6-month.
I get that. Get it. Any thoughts, Marge?
No, I thought that he was willing to do the 6 months.
We do have a public comment.
Okay.
And apparently a hand.
Glenn's
raised.
got a hand up, I think.
Glenn,
Doesn't know how to use the electronic.
I know. I've already said, I can't see his little fingers waving. Let me take a public comment, Glenn, and then we'll let you weigh in.
Due diligence. Where did that go? We don't have figures. We don't have costs. We have percentages that have to be paid on top of base salaries for pensions. There's questions in the contract, which requires him to be unavailable for 10 hours. Where's that going? What about when he talks about limits of his liability to actions? What does that mean? He talks about in the contract about something about teaching or consulting. I believe it was in the contract. We need to go back through the contract and go through it. It was glanced through, it was a discussion. The other thing is, if you're looking for, okay, we've been talking about liens and code enforcement and going to foreclosures. Are we gonna have to outsource? What do we have to outsource that he doesn't specialize in? Because,
Stuff we would have.
well,
to
that's
do
what I'm
for
saying.
6
So my point being is due diligence. We don't even know the final cost and you guys are just coming up with stuff. That's a disservice to this community. You guys have to, you agreed to put it out to bid. And what Todd says, if we have a firm and he could hire his own firm, make his own firm, and we could hire him as his firm, and then we're not obligated to pay all these other things. Because I agree with Todd. We all sat here and watched these prices go up, and I don't think it was inflation. What caused it? And if other towns are keeping them down, why can't we? I mean, I just did a preliminary cost of the pension through the FRS, his base salary with the increase of 5,000 every year, and his base salary was over what we paid, including the base salary and the pension, was over 200,000. And that didn't include all these other perks. I didn't even go through the contract. But then you have extra personnel involved, and then what are we outsourcing? So I agreed with Todd when he said if we outsource, and he can definitely put in for a firm, and then we're not obligated because we're looking at all these other costs. Do we even know what they are? Are we just making a decision? Are we just buying a car because we like a red car? Someone just buy a car, but it might be a Lamborghini. Oh, now I have to pay $250,000 for a car because I didn't do my due diligence. So we need to do that. Please take your time, slow down, put it out for bid if you want. He can apply. He can apply as a firm, which I thought was a fabulous idea to keep costs down. But just to randomly just make this decision, I'm going to buy property because it's for sale, but I go there and it's a swamp or it's a conservation easement, because I didn't do my due diligence. We're doing our due diligence on conservation easements. We're doing our due diligence on lien reductions, but this is fly by the seat of our pants. So you made a decision to go out to bid. I would go out. I think it came up that Glenn can hang on in interim, like here. If it takes 30 days, he can do another 30 days till we go out. But we don't even have a total cost.
Glenn? What do you have to say?
So I'm going to go out on a limb and try to find a compromise that might be acceptable to everybody. Maybe not, because I've been listening to the back and forth and different concerns. So how about Jeff gets hired on a contract that expires in 6 months unless it's renewed by 3 of you? Okay, so you get that 3-vote, not 4-vote issue taken care of. But if it's renewed by 3 of you at the end of 6 months, it's renewed for an additional 2 years. So he's essentially getting a 2.5-year contract, which is not quite the 3 he was asking for, not quite the 2 that the town seemed willing to do. And that might be the way to kind of get over this hump so that you preserve your ability at the end of 6 months. If 3 of you don't want Jeff to stay, and I'm not sure whether Jeff's going to accept this either. I'm trying to find a middle ground here. And if at the end of 6, and no severance for those first 6 months, obviously, it's almost like a probation, one of you use that word. But if he passes the 6 months, then the full 4 vote kicks in and 2 additional years kick in.
And what about the hiring of a paralegal and an assistant and another project coordinator? And I don't.
I mean, all those are legitimate issues. I mean, I think you all know my feeling. I think your legal fees have been going out of control, frankly, ever since Francine became the manager. So let me just put it out there. When you look at the letters, the town's legal fees were $200,000 a year for years and years and years. And when she became interim manager, they went up to 288, and then they're at 400. So, I think you sometimes look in the wrong direction. So you're going to be spending $300,000 plus a year, whether it's in-house or outside. That's just the way it's going to be. If it's Jeff, it's 300, and you're going to have another 50 to 100, another outside lawyer, because no one lawyer can represent a whole town. But unless you can get your internal legal fees under control, and that's not been successful, if Jeff is your choice, then I'm only trying to propose how to get to Jeff, which is let me recap it, 6 months. At the end of 6 months, you can renew it for an additional 2 years. The terms and conditions are already negotiated. And perhaps one of you, maybe Todd and I and Jeff, can sit together and try and negotiate the details, because I hear, Commissioner El Ramy has concerns about some things. Mr. Coleman has some concerns. But it seems like the time of it is your key. Does that have any takers, that idea of 6 months, if 3 people renew it, it's 2 additional years, and then 4 votes kick in?
and it renews with 3 or cancels with 3
That's
at
right.
the end of the
It
6
takes
months,
3 to-
and that still fulfills our charter?
It wouldn't cancel
Sure.
with 3. It would just die at
It would
6
just
months.
die,
It would
right,
just
yeah.
die at 3. So I'm trying to marry Todd and Jeff's kind of proposals there into one package. And then at the end of 6 months, hopefully you say Jeff's doing a great job and you move forward.
But that's essentially what I had said originally was 6 months. And then, we could continue at that point. And Jeff's not open to that unless I
Well, I tried
misunderstood.
to find a middle ground between the both of you guys were saying.
Right.
It's kind of the same.
By the way, I
That's-
just wanted
that's-
to state for the record, because the public record's an important thing to keep clean.
Mhm.
The Torsivia firm had the contract with the town starting in 2019, and in 2019 and 2020, we ranged from 150 to 170. When Mr. Torsivia changed attorneys and we no longer had Brian on the account, the fees went up to $300,000. I sent a note, and I was not the manager at the time, but I was very concerned about the fees. And I communicated that as we were trying to put together a budget amendment for 2022 and a budget for 2023. So I do agree that we have gotten a lot done. Last week, I agreed with Mr. Torsivia about what we thought the driver of the increase was. I do think if everybody looks at the last item that's been on the agenda for the years that I've been manager, those were things that the council said to do. At every council meeting, the council gave additional direction. Those items got delayed. Again, we have talked about who shot John, but I am not going to decide that I am the sole arbiter of how we spent our money. I rang the bell when the money started flowing out of here, and I did not stop. When we sat to do last year's budget, we all sat down together, including the mayor, to go over whether we were going to go in-house and use that number or whether we were going to stay on a contract. I supported staying on the contract. The reason I supported staying on the contract is because the years of investment that we had in the same list of priorities, and I, against many council's wishes, asked that we could continue to have certain attorneys on our account because they did good work and got our work done. So if anybody is to blame for any spending, I will take 100% responsibility for the spending this year with the outside legal firm, because I asked that we keep them because of the work that we had done together. That work didn't get done. Other things came up and we were given other direction, but I stand by what I've said at every meeting. I have nothing but respect for Mr. Torsivia and his firm, and I have been watching and reporting the expenses all along. Okay. Thank you.
Todd, do you want to finish up this item? You brought it up, or what do you want to do?
Are you open to that contract like that at 6 months? It would terminate without any motion.
I think if we were to work on the concept, because I'm hearing Glenn say something, and I'm not sure that you guys are hearing it, and I don't think it is effective to try to negotiate this in public. But I will say that I have made the point to, I think, each of you that I have talked to about the subject. If you put me in the position of the town attorney, and we don't try to hire a paralegal, I don't think that I will be successful, given all that is out there. There's not an excess, there's not any real administrative support within the organization. And to take on that role, I would need the administrative support. And I mentioned to you at the last meeting, and Todd, you and I had the conversation of, well, how do you go out and hire somebody? And I think you made the point, how would you recruit somebody if you only had 6 months for them to take the job, the paralegal? You know, how do you get them in there and say, well, we got a really good situation for 6 months, and then my contract's over, and you're subject to that. So I think it would be a very difficult situation. I'm not sure that Glenn is talking about a termination. I almost thought it was going to be, there would be a pre-negotiated contract so that at the 6-month mark, we would know right now what the 2-year contract looked like. And if that was something, we could work on it, but you know, I think if we're going to work on it, you know, we've got to work on it tomorrow or the next day and get back in here, because we're just treading water, and I don't think that's good for anybody. So.
If I could.
Pleasure of
Tony,
council.
hearing what Jeff just said, and the idea that you need to hire someone, certainly you do, that no one person without either a paralegal or an attorney or someone else helping. And maybe it's, instead of 6 months, maybe it's 9 months. You know, maybe it's 9 months, and at the end of 9 months, the contract automatically expires unless it's renewed by 3 votes. You could say
Well,
that
I don't
two
mean to
different-
be rude. I don't mean to be rude, but I'm not going to negotiate any further in public. It is a waste of time
Right.
and effort to try to figure this out at this point in time. If you and I and a designated council person want to sit down and try to come up with something, I am amenable to that, but I'm not going to waste everybody's time sitting here at this moment and trying to figure out a contract.
Glenn, do you suggest a motion for someone to make to help what Mr. Kurtz and you are talking about happen?
Yeah, I would suggest a motion that the council appoint one of the members of the council to meet with Jeff and I and come up with the best agreement that we can and bring it back at the August meeting. And then it's voted up and down. That way you have something that we negotiate the best we can and circulate it at least a week in advance so that all of you have a chance to see it. And that may be the way, because Jeff is right. Trying to negotiate in public is the absolute worst thing you can do. And you're negotiating with 6 people.
Can I also ask that council please take a look at the draft document that I circulated? Because it is true that we do need certain legal services. And I would rather have your comments on this request for letters of interest sooner than later.
I had a couple of things on that.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
the date for the attendance of the workshop and council meeting for August 12th,
Yeah.
is that just a proposed date?
Just a proposed
Okay.
date. I just put these in so that they show a time frame to get here by September 2nd.
Right. And that we would then be offering the job and approving it at the council meeting where they would then be taking over immediately?
That's what we did the last time.
Okay.
If it's not red, it's what we did the last time. I only put, I don't know if you have a color copy there.
I do.
Okay, I only put the red in to clarify the in-house or
Got it.
where, you know, the dates were, you know, the old dates.
Okay. Do we not have a meeting on the 19th? Did that get canceled?
August 19th is PZ, it's a planning application, but we could certainly put the interviews that day. I think the last time we devoted a special meeting to it.
Okay.
And Francine, saying a special meeting maybe that proposed motion I suggested, rather than putting this all the way off to August and as part of a regular meeting, maybe there's a special meeting in 2 weeks, July 22nd, by then, and you have one item on the agenda, and this is it. And if that's not gonna pass on
Get this
July,
ironed out.
pardon me?
This is for the RLI. This is,
No, I'm kind of back on the agreement with Jeff, because if you're waiting another almost full month until we bring it back, you've kind of lost a month. And if the
Okay,
three people
Is
can't,
everybody willing to let Todd be the negotiator since they've already started having the conversation? Is everybody willing to let that Todd and Jeff and Glenn bring us back something on the 22nd at 6 o'clock?
I'll be out of town.
Can you Zoom?
I can Zoom.
Okay.
what's
Paul?
the date?
The 22nd, 6 o'clock?
And what are we gonna do with the letter of interest in the meantime?
We're
it
gonna all
out.
provide our comments to Francine and
And we're gonna add a foreclosure.
it's
attorney.
gonna go on there too. So on the 22nd, we're gonna settle the legal issue once and for all.
Well, I'm not sure we are, because
No, we're not.
I'm confused now. We're gonna vote on the 22nd for the letter of interest to go out.
No, you actually voted on that already.
Okay, okay.
You voted
So
on
we're-
it
so
already.
on the 22nd, we will have firms that will be here that are.
No,
No, on
I
the
need-
22nd, we're just talking about Jeff's contract. That's the only thing that's gonna be there, whether we're gonna move forward with that or not. And you're gonna negotiate in the meantime.
How fast can we get firms here at the same time and potentially do it on the same meeting?
I don't think we can get firms here on the 22nd. What I did last time, and the reason I brought this item up is because what I did last time is I reached out to all the legal firms and emailed them directly the application without doing any advertising at all. And we talked last time about doing advertising. If you wish me to try to get legal firms to do it by the 22nd, I think that's probably improbable.
Okay, what about the 29th? Another week? Is that possible? And do it all this, because you said we could settle it all at once on the 22nd, but we may not. We may not be able to come to an agreement and it's not settled. And that's why my thought is if we have firms here at the same meeting, then it
But
will
what
be
if you
settled.
come to an agreement?
well, it could
Sorry, we
get,
wasted the firm's time.
right,
I mean,
if you're an outside.
We're gonna
firm-
have, we're gonna have firms that have wasted their time anyway. If we have 5 show up, we're only gonna select
Well,
one of them, right?
If we leave
So-
it as interim services, people will understand that it may or may not happen. Just thinking. It said interim last time.
Oh, if we leave the RFP for the bid. for
That
it-
was my
leave
number
it as
one
interim?
question. Should I have it? Last time what we did, because I had to go back and remember all of it. What we did last time was we
And
did
there's nothing to stop us from
Nothing's binding.
advertising it as interim and then saying, just
Correct.
kidding.
Well, no, what happened last time is it was interim for a period of time and then it converted to permanent.
They were interim, right?
Okay.
Here they are, how many years later?
Yeah.
Right?
So if I do this as interim and I contact all the attorney firms, I know I can do that in the matter of a day
Okay,
or
so we want to
so.
make it the 29th.
But I think that's,
Fine.
you mentioned that you had very little interest when you put it out before.
From individuals. We had very little interest from
Got it.
individuals because what I did was I actually contacted, besides it being on our website, I actually contacted the Palm Beach County League of Cities, and I also sent it to all the attorneys in Palm Beach County. We're pretty close to it. I think I sent to 19 firms. I didn't send it to anybody that wasn't doing.
So wasn't League of Cities what we discussed, putting this in there?
I can put it in their weekly
But
newsletter.
she's saying she thinks she might be able to get a faster result by just reaching.
Oh, I
to local
understand, but
firms.
Yeah.
that was what we discussed.
Richard Radcliffe and
This was
How
going
can
with League
we-
of Cities.
if you
Yeah.
see their weekly newsletter, they always,
So that to keep the costs down, and if you
Yeah.
make phone calls and put it in the free thing, that's.
Yeah.
That's
I
fine.
guess, Yeah.
okay.
Richard is retiring.
Oh, thank
Well, it'll be interesting to see who comes next. So just for the direction, I'm gonna leave the interim on there. I'm gonna add some language for foreclosure experience, and I'm gonna leave the red wording in unless somebody sends me some changes, because it was really pretty much to clarify it could be in-house or it could be a firm.
Mhm.
And Jeff and Glenn and Todd are gonna meet to try to negotiate something between now and then. Is that, we're all in consensus on that?
So where's Lisa sending her questions?
The Todd.
You can't do that. You can't send them.
Yeah,
Todd.
don't do that.
Yeah, I'll send him
I'm
to
just saying.
Valerie
Send them to
Sand.
me.
or Glenn.
Send them to Glenn. There you go.
Send to me. And then, so July 22nd will be what I'm going to call a Jeff day. And if it's successful with Jeff, then whatever you do with the other firms is irrelevant. And if it's not successful, then you're going to interview those on the 29th, it sounded like.
I thought we were gonna do both.
The 29th.
22nd is out. We're doing everything on the 29th.
Well,
Jeff or firm.
Let me suggest you have Jeff first, because if I'm an outside firm and I know and I'm watching these meetings and I know you got this guy that is going to be it, I'm going to think twice about even putting in my name. So I think you want to make a decision on Jeff and a week later have the firms come in, because you're going to get a better, more robust turnout than if somebody watches this meeting and says, wait a minute, why am I going to waste my time putting stuff together when they've got an in-house guy?
July
I'm sorry,
29th, I'm flying.
trying
Because
to
he's
give you-
applying just like a firm would be, right? On the 29th,
I'm
right? I
flying.
mean, he would be no different than another firm standing here. There's 5 firms. Only one's gonna get the contract, and it may not be a firm, it may be Jeff, right? I mean, I would think it's a more even playing field at that point.
Well, my difficulty, I can't be here on the 29th. So I've got another city meeting that night. That's why I was
fine.
suggesting the 22nd, get Jeff wrapped up and hopefully.
right.
I'd prefer to do it all at one night. Does it have to be a Tuesday? Can we make it is there another date that Lisa, you can be there and that Glenn can be there? I'm open. Doesn't have to be a Tuesday.
That week of how about the 28th, Glenn, a Monday night?
Well, let's find out. Lisa,
I'm not back in town.
But you can zoom.
If I'm flying, it depends on, I
Well,
think
you
I'm
said you're
flying on the
29th,
29th.
So the 28th.
Flying back. I think.
Because to me, the Jeff decision
have
should
to
be a
check my
10-minute
calendar.
meeting. Right?
Two different
If we
flights.
negotiate something with Jeff, you're presenting it. I'm going to, again, repeat myself that having firms try to apply in the same night that they know that you're maybe going to hire an in-house person, you've shot yourself in the foot. You really
Agreed.
have.
But on the same note, if they know that we're doing that, but then we're going to bring them in a week later. or
Right,
2
a week
weeks
later, then, because then
Well,
they know
what
Jeff
difference
has
is
the
that?
picture. He's either hired or he's not hired. If he's not hired, then they got a clear field. Why am I going to waste my time coming to a meeting where there's an in-house guy who, from all outward appearances, if I'm the outside firm, is the front runner?
So Glenn, you're recommending that we do something for Jeff on a special meeting for Jeff on the 22nd. And we see how that goes as to whether we're interviewing firms at a later date.
Or you could pick a date now for those firms, whether it's your August meeting, your July 29th meeting. But, you have the firms out there lined, but you don't have them from the same night. That's just rude.
I mean, I have to defer to Glenn. I mean, he's sitting in a position that other firms are going to be sitting at, right? So, I mean, I got to go with what he's
Right,
saying,
so-
right? That he's not, if, as a firm, he's not going to waste his time with this position. So, I mean, I get it. It just puts us in an odd position too, where I'd prefer to have them all on the same night.
Well, if we do it.
We'll
next
have it
week-
less than a week later. If we do Jeff on the 22nd and then,
We won't have time to get people.
no, she's still gonna make her phone calls and say the decision's being
Just send
made
it
then.
out.
She's gonna still start the process and tell them that the night is gonna be the 28th. And we're still gonna need outside counsel for,
Either case, right?
in either case, we're still gonna need outside counsel for a more limited function, but we know for like foreclosures and things like that, we're gonna need it. So
So,
it does Monday, the 28th work for you, Glenn?
So hold on, Glenn, with that in mind, either way, we're gonna hire an outside counsel, right? Whether even if we hire Jeff, we're gonna have an outside counsel. So would you still, as a firm, not present yourself, knowing that we're still gonna select an outside counsel?
Let me think of it this way. If Jeff gets selected and I'm the outside counsel, I'm going to be reporting to Jeff, or I'm going to be working through Jeff. I need to know that, as opposed to, am I the outside counsel? Who am I reporting to? Who's the town attorney? Am I applying to be the town attorney? Am I applying to be a foreclosure lawyer? It makes the town look like we don't know what we're doing, frankly. You know, I think you put an ad out there that says, we're looking for a town attorney with foreclosure experience. If Jeff gets hired, you can either cancel or keep those interviews. If he doesn't get hired, you have those interviews and you got them all teed up and ready to go. I'm really trying to get you to a place where you can get a decision made by the end of this month.
Okay, so 6 o'clock on the 22nd for Jeff's, and the three of you are gonna tomorrow talk and arrange a time to negotiate. 6 o'clock on the 28th for the outside councils. Is everybody okay with that?
Lisa, you're good with the 28th?
Well, now I don't remember. Because I was like, I'm flying out. I'm flying out on Allegiant and I'm coming back on Delta and now I can't remember if well, I don't think I did Allegiant on because I couldn't get back till Tuesday because you know they have limited flights.
Yeah.
Now I don't remember. I would tentatively say I'm here because I think I come back on Sunday.
Okay, great.
I would suggest that if you're going to interview people or you're planning on interviewing people, that you be here.
Yes, of course.
And Glenn, you can do the 28th?
July 28th, yes.
Okay, so we got a plan.
It's not a
Everybody got
Tuesday though,
that?
Todd.
No, it's a Monday.
I'm s-
Okay, let's move on with it. Great. That all you have, Madam Town Manager?
Yes, thank you.
What you started.
Mr. Torcivia, what would you like to add to the conversation?
Well, I had previously said that I could stay up to 60 more days from that June 3rd meeting, but then I looked at my vacations. So really my last day that I'd be able to stay till would be August 20th, just so you know. It's a few days short of the full 60 days. Obviously, there's no meetings or anything. We could probably do the full 60 days, but I'll be out of town on August 20th. The only other item was, you know, the town manager's contract, and I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask the question, because what role, if any, do I play in negotiating the manager's contract? If, again, I held off on doing anything because I'd resigned, and now the clock is ticking. September 30th is not that far away. I sent you all a very preliminary thoughts, and the question is, what role do I play in this? Do you want me to be engaged and beginning to negotiate with Francine, or do you want me to sit back and wait and see what happens on July 22nd or 28th?
Mayor?
My vote would be to sit back and wait and see what happens on July 22nd or 28th, because I don't think it's,
I thought the direction that was
Something-
given by council, and I apologize for interrupting this conversation, even though it's about me. The direction that was previously given was that I would negotiate with the mayor and then I would meet with each council person. I sent my contract to Mr. Torcivia on June 25th. I've asked a few times for comments. You saw my emails today. I got business sense comments from Mr. Torcivia that he sent to you. So I have not had any conversation, and that's why you didn't get the contract from me. And I feel at this particular point in time, that I would rather speak with each of you since you've seen Mr. Torcivia's business suggestions. And if there is an issue with legal sufficiency, I will happily work with Mr. Torcivia on where that is, because when I asked that question, there was only a single sentence response that you guys saw. So I understand that the wording in there is really eye-opening. But I've already stated my case multiple times in public meetings, and I think that I was clear in my emails to you. We all have business decisions to make, and I'm very happy to talk to each of you. And I think we have Mr. Torcivia's comments, and I will give him a call and hopefully he'll be available and we can talk about the legal insufficiencies, and I will correct them before I sit down with you. I'm
Okay.
also amenable to changing things, as you saw in my email.
perfect. Mr. Torcivia, does that sound good?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just, you know, the primary legal issue is a lot of places in the contract, the authority of the council is being usurped or taken away or limited. And that I think violates your charter. You have certain authority, and to say that council members can't critique the manager, that council members can't do various things to kind of control the council through a contract, that's a legal sufficiency issue. That's probably the biggest one.
That, and that'll be for you guys to discuss
Okay.
tomorrow and iron out, and then she'll have the conversations with each of us. We're not gonna get into that match here. Is that all you had to say, Glenn?
Yep, I was hoping I was saying congratulations to Jeff, but I guess that'll wait till we get the chance to get together and hopefully work this out.
Okay, Valerie,
No report.
Mr. McClendon, first one up. I know you were the one who wanted to make comments. Go.
So first, I want to thank Phyllis for the many years she spent here. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to show up for her proclamation. Hopefully next month she does. And I appreciate the council, having their faith to put me up here until March at least. That's very appreciative. So one of the things I want staff to bring back at our next meeting is a resolution regarding life safety issues for code enforcement cases, specifically industrial uses on AR zone property, where the resolution spells out that there are life safety issues, that we don't need a complaint for those cases.
Citations?
Right.
Yeah.
No, we don't need a complaint because Florida statute says you don't need a complaint if it's health and life safety, right? The resolution would make it where those cases come priority and they are moved as efficiently as fast as possible. We discussed the fine reduction on that. Perhaps we should add in there that we start foreclosure proceedings after it gets to a certain dollar amount.
We have that already.
So is there a consensus on council to bring back a resolution like that so we can start aggressively going to this?
Well, I think we already have a resolution that says that it doesn't have to be complaint driven, that the code officers can initiate it. So that's already done. I think we put, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, 1 year or $100,000 in fines. Was that the number that we put in? So we already have a resolution that for those
Okay,
things.
so how do we make it clear that the council deems those cases high priority and they need to come first and we need to aggressively go after those?
I think we need to change what we've adopted, because what we've adopted is general life, health, safety. We're going a step further and you want that defined. And that's fine, because that means we're going to be proactive as opposed to reactive. So we do need to make the change.
Okay.
I
So-
think, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that goes more to the conversation about priorities, right? There's not 165 priorities in this town,
Right.
right? There is a hierarchy of code enforcement that I think most of us up here have expressed some frustration with. And I think, in your specific but vague statement, we all know which properties are the ones that are most egregious here and need to be aggressively pursued. And it's actually one of my comment items also. So
And we should put the aggressive pursuit in for definition, we should come up with that as well. and
yeah,
bring
I
it
don't think
back.
it's pursuing 200 RVs. I think it's about industrial use
On AR property.
on AR property. Long-term offenders need to stop. It's how you create a slum.
Well, it's not even just long-term offenders. I mean, if there's 20 semis on a parcel for the past 30 days, that's a priority, right?
Absolutely.
So it doesn't need to be long-term ones. It needs to be ended.
I'm also speaking to the ones that we are all aware of.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
So are we in agreement for staff to bring that back to us at the next meeting?
Does that need to be by resolution?
I would suspect so.
I think so.
All right.
I think.
A
it does.
direction to,
Can you guys have it
Prioritize.
by the next meeting, or do you need it by the
Well, I
one?
would like it to be in resolution, because right now, a lot of things that we are supposedly not doing, we are. And so by this being an official direction, we have something that, is lasting. It's an official action.
I've asked for a lot of things to be in resolution, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I would.
like, I guess my
that.
question was, does it have to be a resolution at this? Can we have it written and be here by the next meeting, or is it good enough to have a clear direction from us to proceed that way with that as a priority as we're writing the resolution. You follow?
I think a
Don't-
resolution has way more weight.
Yeah, for sure.
We currently have nuisance abatement on the books and we have a nuisance on the books. That nuisance ordinance has needed to be changed for a long time. Don't know if anybody remembers, but it came forward several times. It's one of the things that we've talked about. We never get to the dance. So I'm not sure if it's a resolution or an ordinance, but it's covered in nuisance and we, per the last conversations we had with our attorneys and counsel with it, could not enforce it. Does anybody remember when we brought it forward? Yeah. So in answering, yeah, I think we should have a resolution, but ultimately we may need an ordinance.
But we don't need a resolution that says that this is a priority.
No, you don't have that as a resolution right now.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's what my point is. We
Yeah.
don't, an ordinance takes 2 adoptions and all that.
Right.
We need a resolution that says this is where the council stands. This is the priority. We need to pursue these. And this nonsense about, and you and I have discussed this about people that say, well, they've been here for 20 years and the whole 9 yards. We discussed that maybe one of them that's small might fall into that because they were here since 1976 and 76 is when the codes were adopted. But anything since then, if they weren't legal, then they weren't legal ever. But, and that's my point, is we need to start straightening this up.
This has been kicked down, this can has been kicked down the
Yeah.
road for so long.
I think you should put landscaping maintenance companies in there too. They're explicitly forbidden in the town.
I agree. I agree. I thought let's start with the industrial uses. I don't know if that would be considered industrial.
Yeah.
You know, we,
Certainly if they have a gas can or pump that they haven't gotten approval for, which we've seen proliferate too.
well, if we're talking about one that's got a site, never.
No, I'm not talking about
Okay.
that one.
Well, that's if they have a gas pump, that's a violation of bill.
Well,
A5, 1510. You know, my point is that's a violation. You know, you can't just go put a gas pump in, right?
Yeah.
That's a building code issue. That's a permittable issue. That's a whole nother ball of wax too. So
But yes, I agree.
they got all their barriers in place.
We're all in consensus to put something hopefully on the next agenda, but if not.
I don't want to make it too broad because then they're going to be running all over the place. I want to try
Right.
to focus on the very egregious things, and that's why I said industrial uses. Right? I'm not in disagreement with you. Let's try to focus on something small right now, small group.
And get it done.
But I guess that's my point. So every time you want to redirect code enforcement, you're going to come up with a resolution.
Let's see how this goes. Resolution takes 1 vote and it's done. Let's do this and see how it goes, because I suspect in a year, we're not going to be done with those industrial uses. Forget about the landscape companies, right?
Right. Let's
Let's see how this
let's
goes.
not thicken the stew too.
Yes, but
much.
they seem to be one of the most prolific expanders at the moment.
Seemed like the trucks were because they're all getting kicked out of the acreage and coming here.
Well, there's that, but I know that Francine has had some success with those and they seem to have been curtailed somewhat.
But she's not stopping with those.
No, I understand. I'm just saying that I can speak of one I pass every day
Mhm.
going from here north that has 2 gas and everybody has to drive right past it. It's not like they're hiding what they're doing. And
That's true.
I mean, is
and
that something?
they also have a bunch of semi trailers back there too.
Is that something the fire department could deal with, or?
Well, you know, it's interesting. We've talked to the fire department numerous times. And as long as the zoning is AR, or they cannot go on there, because that's what we said. If you already know that there's a use on there that's commercial, we said the same thing to the property appraiser. That's why we look at the BTRs, because with the BTR, we can get, I can't remember what NAICS stands for, but it's the National Industry Code of your business. And so if your business has a BTR from the county and the county NAICS is for industrial, then why isn't the property classified as industrial by the property appraiser and taxed? Because that's the other thing. We haven't gotten the taxes from those properties. So, you know, we can start with this resolution and see where it goes.
Okay. Thank you. Is that
You're
all you have, Todd?
I have a lot more, but we have so many things on
One
the
thing-
plate right now with the legal thing and this, so let's leave it at that.
Let's end the plate. Okay, Lisa?
So yeah, Todd, I'm going to piggyback on that. We were all aware of a legal document that named people personally, and I think hopefully this will resolve some of that, getting the town staff actively involved in stuff like this so that it doesn't require action that way. Francine, you mentioned the vested rights properties would be coming forward to us.
They will have to eventually because
What's eventually look like?
I don't know. We do have a meeting with one of the attorneys on Thursday morning, I think. I would know better after that. They're supposed to talk to us about their tree mitigation. You know, we go for everything on those properties.
Unfortunately, Mr. Gallant left, but maybe you know the answer to this. At the very end of A Road North, where North Road connects at, what is that, 160th, right? And then there's people that use the canal bank to access their property when they have a road in front of their property at 161st.
Correct. We're trying to block that
Are
off.
we got a gate coming in
I'm
there?
on it.
Because this has
I've been
been,
working on it.
okay.
One of the problems, so I've been working with Craig on that. One of the problems is there's a gentleman, we're trying to make sure they can still be used as a trail, right?
Sure.
Okay, because that's the whole point, and this stems out of a lot of concerns from people who trail ride up there and can no longer trail ride on the trail because road rock was put down on the trail.
Right.
So in the past 6 months, we fixed the canal bank because they were driving on it so egregiously. We have our community standards officer looking into the residences that are in the back, so that are using those roads to go there and that had dissipated the road surface so much that they had to actually go put fill in. But there is a gentleman on the next block down where 161st starts that lives there that drives his carriage up and down. So we're trying.
He only goes to a certain property.
He only goes to Snowball's property and back, yeah.
Yeah, but I thought
So
the
we're
property was
trying-
for sale.
We're trying to create a structure. Craig was trying to come up with a structure that would still, or a place where that blockage is that would allow that man to continue using it for those purposes.
I thought that property was for sale. You're talking about DuPont's.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was for sale.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's where the last conversation, which was about a week ago,
Okay.
was. So it is being worked on.
All right, and we had talked previously about the commercial district, and I know that there was some action on it or discussion on it. It had to be through the district, and has there been any further?
Oh, I actually have been drafting a document to use perhaps for partnering with the Department of Commerce with the state of Florida because they provide rural infrastructure funding and thought that that might be a way that we could get some of that infrastructure covered relative to the roads and drainage.
Well, I think we were talking about a taxing district.
Yes, we were talking about a taxing district
Yeah.
and they would be part of it. In summary, if we were going to do a taxing district, there's a couple ways that it could happen. One is that there can be a vote of the property owners, 60%, through a petition process that could be handled through mail and so on. Then it would come forward to council and council would vote on whether they wish to create that footprint and that district. And then the second part of that would be how it is taxed. If it is taxed with an ad valorem assessment, then that would require a referendum vote of the property owners in the area.
So they get to decide if they're going to raise their own taxes.
That's
There is no possibility for us to just do it.
Got it.
It'll have-
Okay.
There
It has to
is,
be by the-
there is a possibility of us to be able to do it if we create an improvement zone. And we just have to be able to ascribe a benefit to it, and it can still be a neighborhood improvement district if we use the non-ad valorem assessment.
But they would still have to vote for it.
They would have to go through the public hearing process on the non-ad valorem assessment. It could be a non-ad valorem assessment taxing unit.
So there's a
based
way
on
for
the-
council to create this.
Correct.
Without the affect.
I don't think that's how you would proceed, but it is an option
It's a
to
okay.
proceed. Yeah.
All right.
But I laid out the ones that require the votes.
All right, I know that Karen mentioned earlier about the SB 180 and Mr. Books weighed in on this with his staff, but I would like to see a state attorney general opinion asking from the town specifically to declare whether that is only the properties affected by the hurricanes.
I think Joe Siciliano spent hours on the phone speaking to people up there, and she's already got that opinion, so you might want to ask
Okay.
her.
All right.
Because she actually spoke to the committee members, and
She
she's
did.
gotten all, and she's
Okay.
spoken to their lawyers, and
She
she's gotten
did.
all the interpretations. And the answer is not the one you want to hear.
Okay, the
But
church,
Ask her, because she's got.
okay, the church sign that got put in, because the county had approved it back, eons ago. I happened to drive late several times because of dancing in the airport. Not dancing in the airport, but dancing and the airport. That sign is on at all hours of the night, and it's supposed to be on during business hours.
Correct, right.
So
we need to.
I would like to see that happen. And any report on the 4th of July, I happened to be out of town. Did it go well? Was it cool?
Sirens going all up and down Southern Boulevard. I can tell you that. Soon as twilight hit, everything started going off, and all you heard was fire rescue up and down Southern.
I think it was probably, I was in the acreage pet sitting. I've never heard it as bad out there as it was. I understand from Darcy, it's my neighbor, and she had texted me a couple of days before and said, hey, the signs are great. Maybe people will notice them because they're so big and they're too big to steal. Yeah, which I thought was a great comment. But then she texted me on that night and said, so much for the signs. So my assumption by her comment is that it was pretty bad.
Did the sheriff give us any feedback?
We did not get any feedback from the sheriff.
Maybe for their quarterly report,
Yeah.
we get something.
That would be good.
Well, that's a shame.
Fire rescue has a report.
Okay,
Bill
thank
asked
you.
both of them.
Paul?
Oh.
Oh, maybe you had nothing to say?
Oh, crud.
Oh.
You already said it all.
Oh. The I know that a lot of the stuff on the ULDC list that we had, all those changes, etc., the chart that we did because of 180, a lot of that stuff can't transpire as of right now.
Karen is actually doing an analysis of it
Okay.
because we believe two things. One, the law hasn't changed for anybody's private application.
Right.
So, all those things can still process through. Our question is, when they come to council, is the only answer denial? So we're researching that. With regard to some of the other things, we believe that if it's not restrictive, not more restrictive, then we can bring it forward.
Well, that was our question with Rural Vista because it wasn't necessarily, there was a couple of more restrictive things, I think, as far as buffer size
Right.
got greater, but everything else was just kind of language based, it was,
We talked about trying to put some language in the intent, a lot of ordinances and code sections have intent and purpose and so on. So we thought, like, for instance, with things we couldn't implement now, that it would be our intention to have a 300-foot buffer, blah, blah.
Right.
So we were trying to think out how we could perhaps let people know, because if people agree to, if an applicant agrees to the 300-foot buffer, that's not a problem. It's not more restrictive. So we were trying to think of how we could word it so that they would know what we want. If it's possible.
And I mean, I don't know if you guys would have a problem, but I was approached by a gentleman, and the charity is escaping me, but basically what the idea is they are partnering with South Tech vocational school, and they're trying to work a deal to rehab some of the road prison site. Actually, I would think they're going to tear down buildings and rebuild and to build a vocational school there. And he was trying to garner support to take back to the county commission, to the board, to show that other communities were supportive or whatever. I don't know if we want to address something like that. I can bring more detail back on the 22nd, 29th, or the 2nd or whatever. Yeah, But if you like, I'll bring some more, I'll get some more details and bring it back, or I can have him come in and talk to us about it, whatever. It's a really good program. It's going to be like a charter school, but for vocational, like all trades type of thing. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
why don't you have him come on the second? Is everybody okay with that? Because I'd like to hear more about it before we do, we do.
work? All right. Okay. I'll
August.
reach out to him. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Herzog.
Yes. A road, north of my property. The horse manure, vehicles are coming and going. And they're really ripping up the turn road there. So I know we got a letter. I think everyone received the letter. What is the status of that? Do you have any updates?
It was in front of the magistrate yesterday, and it is in violation, running fines.
Okay. Well, their
The letter-
their
the letter-
garbage truck broke down and was impeding the traffic. They're hauling manure in like a coastal garbage truck. It's not coastal, it's a old dilapidated white one. And it had to be towed up the road to be taken into the property to be unloaded.
So would you agree that the manure operation is life, health, safety?
Absolutely.
So,
Right. Yeah, I mean, they're using all kinds of ways of transporting it. I mean, these dump trailers that, you know, you can flip them and empty them. They're using those. They're like 4 foot high with maybe 12-foot base on them. And they seem to be coming from Wellington over. They're not from within our town. And they're loading up 18-wheelers. I don't know how they're putting everything in there, but they're loading up 18-wheelers and they're making turns and knocking down the berm that is there because they can't maneuver.
It's like living by the sod farm.
What's that?
I said, it's like living by the sod farm
Oh,
with their 18-wheelers
Yeah.
and dump truck.
Yeah.
Yep.
okay. What is the procedure for bringing forward previously discussed items that, like the ones that we had talked about for referendum vote, for instance, the elections,
Committee?
Remember, we were gonna do a charter review committee and we were all supposed to bring forward 5 names. Does everybody have their names? I have mine.
Dang it.
Okay, so how about August 2nd, hard and fast? If you don't
August
have-
5th.
Okay, August 5th. Bring your 5 names.
Hey, do we have to have a committee with that many people?
No,
No, but
we
if
figured overlap and.
we figured overlap, everybody would
duplication
appoint 3.
Yeah.
2 to 3. We'll decide at that time, everybody would appoint 2 to 3, but bring 5
Bring
names because
5.
we figured there'd be
So
overlap.
so the committee's gonna be how many people? 5?
10 to 15.
10 to 15. We'll make a decision on that night. Let's see if everybody brings 5 names, right? Well, actually, we're only bringing 5 because we figure everybody's gonna have the same names.
and that's for the charter review.
Yeah, and that's part of
That's
the
part of
voting
that.
thing, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, there were several things. I know with the term of, you know, the people, how long they sit here, was one of them. The salary for the council was listed as a referendum item, but the last time the change was made by ordinance, so,
Yeah, it's not in the charter.
It's
Yeah.
not in the chart.
well, that's what I was saying, that
Yeah,
it wasn't in
You
the
are
charter.
correct.
Yeah, so that should be addressed. BTRs, there seems to be some complaint about the excessive charges for like a home-based computer operated instructor being charged for BTR. And they felt that, it seemed like it was excessive, that it's $25 for one thing and 75 for another, coming up to a total of 100. Whereas it seems like it's more expensive in our town than county.
We
It's
use-
not.
We use Royal Palm Beach, right? Is what we
Yeah.
originally adopted.
Yeah,
We adopted
we
Royal Palm Beach
adopted
as
Royal
well.
Palm Beach and we adopted it, I think, in 2018. And we have looked at it multiple times since 2018 on how we could do something different. And we cannot because of statutory preemption. What we can do is if we want to be Wellington, we can denounce our Royal Palm Beach BTR and we can pick up the Wellington BTR. Or if we want to be Westlake, we could denounce our, Royal Palm Beach BTR and pick up theirs. That's the only thing we can do.
Westlake probably did Royal Palm though.
Probably.
Yeah.
So we're kind of limited and essentially everything is $100. Pretty close to
It's
everything is
pretty
$100.
standard and reasonable for a
Yeah.
BTR, really. I
I mean,
mean,
when it was occupational license prior to being a BTR, it was all generally around $100.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It hasn't changed.
it's really not that high.
Okay, so whether you do it by computer or whether you do it by
A business is a
traffic,
business.
it doesn't matter.
Business is a business.
Yeah,
Business is-
home-based business.
Okay.
Yeah. Home-based
Um,
business.
I was kind of concerned about Glenn's letter to Francine.
No, it
and-
was to you all.
Well, where was the direction for him to issue that to us? What was the cost for all of that? I mean, now it's public record, and it's exposed to everything.
An unfinished document, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I share that concern.
So is there any issue that we should be discussing at this point about that?
Well, the cat's out of the bag at this point, right? So I mean, I don't know how you retract that. The whole point is we're trying to move forward with a different legal
Approach.
services, right? And that'll resolve anything with that.
Okay, but who or how do you rein in what Glenn is able to do? I mean, is he always self-directed or,
No, he's supposed to work at the direction of council.
okay? Slap him on the wrist.
Well, I think you just did. I believe you just achieved that goal.
All right, that's it.
That's all you got. I don't have a whole lot to add other than, I've mulled about whether to talk about this or not. I prayed about it in church on Sunday. I was just gonna let it go because church was all about this weekend about, spreading love and thought, yeah. So I would just say, try to be kind to each other. Calling people names and saying cruel things about people. It's not who we are. Who we are is a community that really needs to try to work together, and we face a lot of really difficult issues right now. And it's super important that we be kind to each other. And of course, we're going to have different opinions. And of course, we're going to have different viewpoints. But we should be able to express them. It's something that's become like really pervasive in the world today, that you can't say something different than somebody else. And you get this like rabid, attacking reaction. And I like to think that we can rise above that. I like to think that this little community can rise above that and that we can, have different ideas and different opinions, and the world will still revolve and go around, and we'll come to some kind of a compromise and consensus and decision together that works for all of us. So.
Yeah, real quick, completely unrelated to that.
Oh, I thought you were going to do a little kumbaya too, but okay. Don't do it.
When you were the chair of the finance committee,
Uh-huh.
things moved a lot more smoothly and it seemed like everybody knew what was going on. Is it possible that you can go to the next finance meeting and discuss the finance committee's role and try to keep them on task as to where they should be going with that committee? That's directed to you, Anita.
I hear who you're directing it to.
Have a policy against that?
We do have a policy against individual council members soliciting opinions from different committee members. We do, other than the one that they, seeking advice from or soliciting opinions. I don't know that we have a policy against that. I just don't know that
It just kind of seems like
the
finance
current
committee's all-
committee would be very receptive to that. I kind of feel like it's the job of staff to direct them, but if I serve at your pleasure, if you guys would like me to go and give it the old college try, if that's the consensus of council, I certainly would be willing to do that.
I'm good with that. I mean, it's in a public forum. It's not private phone calls, right? It's at the committee meeting.
Correct.
So there's not that issue where you're trying to direct them or it's about trying to let them know is that this is what their function should be. Right now, it seems like they're all over the place. And they're not
There's no other
focused.
Council person.
Well, I think there's a greater fear out there that even after what we discussed last week and we said, listen, got no problem with digging in. We expect that, but first and foremost is to get the budget done and then after dig in. I think the fear is,
If anybody said dig in, but go ahead. Go ahead.
I said dig in. Some people agreed with me. Let's just play it back, roll it back.
They didn't
And they didn't disagree. Okay. So, I think there is some digging that needs to, listen, there's nothing wrong with it. I think the fear is that there's some fear out there that the committee is going to get sunset as soon as we're done with the budget. Kind of like what happened last time. And there was no, that was the thing is like, well, listen, we got sunsetted and listen, a lot of committees got sunsetted except for PZB, right? Because got to have PZB because all the applications are coming in. So I think that's the fear is that once this process is done, that it's not going to be sunsetted. And there's a few people up here, maybe not all of us, maybe it was just me, maybe I'm having revisionist memory, but that tend to think that if you wanted to dig in, then the time to dig in was after the budget process. So I think that's,
Paul, I'm with you digging in. But I'm curious why you think the finance committee is all over the place. They haven't even met since our last meeting.
Well, it's from their previous meetings that they've had. One of the things is, and I still can't wrap my head around this, is why was the RV park in front of them? I don't understand that. I can't wrap my head around.
That was
why.
a staff decision. FAC never asked for that.
Yeah,
I don't believe that was a staff decision. I believe that was an applicant request and they paid for it.
yeah.
I believe that's how that occurred. It was
Okay.
not a staff.
So
decision.
when that auditor was in front of them, they treated him horribly, horribly. I mean, it was.
The
it was-
auditor or the
Both.
finance director?
Both.
Yeah, the new finance guy. They treated him horrible, like he had just robbed a bank or something like that.
Well, you do know that the new finance guy had not been officially hired by the town and was there giving Munalytics information, which wasn't his information. And that was really their question. As far as how they treated the auditor, I don't know. I didn't go back and watch the meeting. I had a lovely meeting with the auditor and we had a lot of questions answered. So
I mean, so, I mean, I talked to Manish about, doing an audit and he's like, oh, we should do a forensic audit. I mean, the dollar amount is insanity to do a forensic audit.
I agree.
And I asked him, do you think there's money missing? No, I don't think there's money missing. So then what are we looking, usually you want a forensic audit when you think there's money missing.
Right.
There's not. And even he acknowledges there's not. It's the way the money is being spent by 5 council members, right? Not necessarily by staff, right? I mean.
Well, that's
yeah,
not true. Money moves around and there's amendments, and this goes back to my earlier conversations. We need amendments sooner. We have in our HR manual that even though we can hire a temporary employee, that still has to come back to us for the financial aspect of it. We've had an employee since April 2nd, still no amendment for that.
I was not happy the fact
So-
that we're so over budget with legal fees and that hadn't come to us. But I just got here. I don't know what conversations were with town manager.
But
and
it doesn't
council.
matter what conversations, an amendment has to come forward.
I agree. It
That's a
should-
policy that I think council has to take forward as we go into the budgeting. So
Yeah,
So,
so.
so
we can only
Do
talk
we-
here, so it's nice to
Consensus
talk.
or not the consensus? That's all I need to know. So I need to be in a
I'm good-
meeting.
I'm good with it. Even if she just goes there and reviews.
I don't see any need for it.
The fund.
Lisa doesn't see a need. Todd wants me to.
see how
How about you?
I think it might, calm them down a little.
Okay, so
and
four
give
people,
them a direction.
3 people are asking me to do it. So please let me know when the next finance committee meeting is. And can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
You were so on the
Oh my gosh, it was like a so, yes, I had such a great time. I didn't want to leave, but
Pretty cool.